My son-in-law called me from 30,000 feet in the air to tell me my life was over. He held a glass of champagne to the camera lens, his teeth flashing white in a smile that was all predator and no warmth. "I emptied your accounts, Winston," he said, his voice dripping with the arrogance of a man who thinks he has just won the lottery. "I sold the house this morning. Zoe and I are getting married in Vegas, and thanks to you, we are going to do it in style. Goodbye, priceless old man." I just stared at the screen. I did not scream. I did not cry. I did not beg. I just smiled. He had no idea the document he used to sell my home was a trap I set 3 years ago. He had no idea that by the time he landed, he would not be walking into a honeymoon suite. He would be walking into a federal investigation. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to stand up to family who mistook your silence for weakness. The smell of a hospital waiting room is distinctive. It is a mixture of floor wax, stale coffee, and anxiety. I was sitting in the cardiology department of St. Mary's Hospital in Chicago waiting for the results of a routine stress test. At 68 years old, you learn to live with the hum of fluorescent lights and the rhythmic beeping of machines. I was buttoning the cuff of my shirt, my fingers stiff but steady, when my phone vibrated against the hard plastic of the chair. It was not a call. It was a notification from my bank app. The screen lit up with a single terrifying banner. "Your balance is $0.00. A transfer of $850,000 has been completed." Most men would have felt their hearts stop. Most men would have run to the nurse station screaming for help, thinking they had been hacked by some anonymous cybercriminal in a basement halfway across the world. But I am not most men. I spent 30 years as a forensic auditor for the IRS. I spent my life hunting down people who thought they could hide money, people who thought they were smarter than the system. I know that money does not just disappear, it leaves a trail. And in this case, I knew exactly where the trail led. Before I could even unlock the phone to check the transaction details, the screen changed. A video call request. The name on the screen made my jaw tighten. Braden. I swiped green. The sterile gray of the hospital waiting room was instantly replaced by the warm golden lighting of a first-class airplane cabin. Braden was leaning back in a leather seat that looked wider than my entire hospital chair. He was wearing that Italian suit. I knew he could not afford the one he bought on a credit card that was already maxed out. Beside him, huddled against the window, was my daughter Zoe. She was not looking at the camera. She was staring out at the clouds, her shoulders hunched as if she were trying to make herself disappear. Braden raised a crystal flute of champagne. The bubbles fizzed near the microphone, a sound so crisp it felt like he was in the room with me. "Hey there, Winston," Braden said. His voice was loud, too loud, drawing the attention of unseen passengers around him. He wanted an audience. He always wanted an audience. I stayed silent. I adjusted the phone so he could see my face clearly. I wanted him to remember this moment. "Cat got your tongue, old man," Braden laughed, taking a sip of the wine. "I just wanted to call and thank you, for the wedding gift." I looked at Zoe. "Zoe, look at me," I said. My voice was calm, low, the same tone I used to use when I interrogated tax evaders who were lying about their offshore accounts. She flinched, but she did not turn. Braden moved the phone so his face blocked her out completely. "Leave her alone, Winston," Braden sneered. The mask of politeness he had worn for the last 2 years was gone. In its place was the face of a man who finally held the whip. "She is done with you. We are both done with you." "What did you do, Braden?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "I did what you were too selfish to do," he said. He tapped the breast pocket of his jacket. "That power of attorney you signed last week. The one you signed when you were groggy from your heart medication. It turns out it is a very powerful piece of paper. I liquidated the retirement fund, I closed the savings, and the best part, I sold the house." The house. The words hung in the air between Chicago and the stratosphere. That house was not just bricks and mortar. It was where my wife Etta and I had raised Zoe. It was where Etta had taken her last breath. It was a museum of our history, filled with the art we had collected, the piano. Etta played the garden she planted. "You sold my house," I repeated. "I sold our house," Braden corrected, emphasizing the word our, or rather Zoe's house. "Since you gave me power over your assets, I decided to diversify. We found a cash buyer. A flipper. Signed the deed this morning while you were getting your heart checked. They are sending a crew to clear out the junk tomorrow. Junk. He called Eda's life work junk. Zoe finally turned her head. Her eyes were red-rimmed. Dad, I am sorry, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the jet engines. Braden said it was the only way. He said you were getting too old to manage it. He said we could take care of you better if we had the money. Braden laughed again, a harsh barking sound. Don't apologize to him, babe. He never respected us. He looked at me, his eyes narrowing with a malice that sent a chill down my spine. You know, Winston, for a smart guy, you are pretty stupid. You sat on all that equity living like a monk while Zoe and I were struggling. You people always hold on to cash like it is going to save you. Well, guess what? It saved us instead. The racial undertone was there as it always was with Braden. It was subtle, plausible, deniable, but sharp as a razor. He had always looked at me and seen a stereotype. He saw an old black man who got lucky, not a professional who had worked 80-hour weeks for 3 decades. I'm going to hang up now, Winston, Braden said, checking his expensive watch. Another thing bought with money he did not earn. We land in Vegas in an hour. By tonight I will be a married man with a very healthy bank account. Do not try to call us. I blocked your number on Zoe's phone, and do not bother going home. The locks have already been changed. He leaned into the camera, his face filling the frame, distorted and ugly. Goodbye, old man. Try not to have a heart attack on your way out. The screen went black. The call ended. The silence of the hospital rushed back in, heavy and suffocating. A nurse walked by pushing a cart of medication. She glanced at me, checking to see if the old man in the corner was okay. I gave her a small nod. I was perfectly fine. I placed the phone on my knee. I reached into my back pocket and pulled out my wallet. It was worn leather shaped to the curve of my hip after years of use. I opened it to the clear plastic sleeve on the left side. Eda smiled back at me. It was a photo from our 30th anniversary. She was wearing her blue dress, the one that matched her eyes. I did not have a heart attack. My pulse, I noted with detached professional curiosity, had barely risen. Braden thought he was a hunter. He thought he had just taken down a wounded gazelle. He thought the power of attorney he waved around was the golden ticket to my kingdom. He was right about one thing. I did sign that document last week. I was groggy. I was vulnerable. But Braden made the mistake that every amateur criminal makes. He assumed his victim was asleep at the wheel. He assumed that because I was old, I was slow. He assumed that because I was quiet, I was weak. He did not know about the Eda and Winston irrevocable trust. He did not know that the house he claimed to have sold did not belong to me. It belonged to a legal entity that required 2 signatures to authorize a sale, mine and my lawyer's. He did not know that the bank account he had just drained was a decoy account I set up 5 years ago specifically for a moment like this. Yes, there was money in it, $850,000, but it was bait. I looked at the black screen of my phone. I could imagine Braden right now ordering another round of champagne, high-fiving the air, feeling like the king of the world. He was flying toward Las Vegas, the city of luck. But his luck had run out the moment he decided to cross me. I picked up my phone again. I did not call the police. Not yet. That would be too easy. That would be too quick. Braden wanted to play a game of high stakes. He wanted to gamble with my life. Fine. I would sit at the table. I scrolled down my contacts list until I found the name I needed. It wasn't the police. It wasn't Zoe. It was Sloan, my lawyer, the woman who had helped me build the steel cage that Braden had just blindly walked into. I pressed call. Sloan answered on the first ring. Her voice was sharp, professional, cutting through the noise in my head. Winston. Is everything all right? I looked up at the clock on the hospital wall. It was 10 in the morning. In Vegas, the day was just beginning. Activate Protocol 1. I said, my voice steady, devoid of any tremor. There was a pause on the other end. Then I heard the sound of a keyboard clacking. He did it, Sloan asked. He actually did it. He emptied the account, I said, and he thinks he sold the house. I heard Sloan let out a long breath. It sounded almost like a sigh of pity, but not for me. For him. All right, Winston, she said. I am freezing the transfer on the receiving end. The bank will flag it as suspicious activity within the hour. But you know what happens next. Once we pull this trigger, there is no going back. He will go to prison. Zoe might get hurt in the crossfire. I looked at the empty chair beside me. I thought about Zoe's face on the screen, looking away, letting him insult me, letting him steal everything her mother and I had built. She was my daughter, but she had made her choice. She had chosen to board that plane. She is not a child anymore, Sloan, I said. She is an accomplice. Do it. I hung up the phone. I stood up, buttoning my jacket. I picked up my cane not because I needed it to walk, but because it made me look harmless. It was a prop, just like the confused old man act I had played for Braden for the last 2 years. I walked out of the hospital into the biting Chicago wind. The air tasted of exhaust and winter, but to me it tasted like clarity. Braden was flying first class to Vegas. I was going to war. And unlike him, I had prepared for this battle long before the first shot was fired. He said he emptied my accounts. He said goodbye to the priceless old man. I hailed a taxi and gave the driver my home address. I knew the locks were changed. I knew the house was empty, but I had a spare key that Braden would never find, and I had a bottle of scotch hidden in the floorboards that was older than him. I was going to go home, pour myself a drink, and wait for the phone to ring, because when he tried to spend that first dollar in Vegas, the cards were going to come tumbling down. And I wanted to be fully awake to hear the sound of his crash. The taxi driver looked at me in the rearview mirror with concern. "Are you sure this is the right address, sir?" he asked. He was staring at the front lawn. I followed his gaze. There it was, a large wooden sign pounded aggressively into the frost-covered grass. Sold. The letters were bold and red. Underneath, in smaller font, it read, "Immediate occupancy." "Yes," I said. My voice sounded hollow to my own ears. "This is the place." I paid the driver and stepped out onto the sidewalk. The wind in Chicago cuts through you in January, but the cold I felt had nothing to do with the weather. I stood there for a long moment, gripping the handle of my cane. This house was bought with the overtime pay of 20 years. It was where I carried Etta across the threshold. It was where we painted the nursery yellow for Zoe. Now it looked like a corpse. The curtains were gone. The windows stared back like empty eye sockets. I walked up the driveway. My feet crunched on the dead leaves that the landscaping crew usually cleared away. Braden had fired them months ago to save money. I reached the front door. The brass knocker, a lion's head Etta had picked out at a flea market in Charleston, was missing. Only the screw holes remained. I reached into my pocket for my keys, then remembered Braden's words. The locks have been changed. He wanted me to stand here helpless, locked out of my own life. He wanted me to pound on the door and scream. I walked around the side of the house, past the rose bushes that were now just thorny skeletons. I knelt down near the ventilation grate. To anyone else, the loose brick in the foundation looked like a sign of disrepair. To me, it was insurance. I worked it loose with my fingernails. Behind it, wrapped in oiled cloth to prevent rust, was a single brass key. I went to the back door. The key slid into the lock with a satisfying click. Braden had been thorough with the front, but he was lazy. He never checked the back entrance because he never used it. He was a front door kind of man, all show and no substance. I pushed the door open and stepped into the kitchen. The silence hit me first. A house is never truly silent. The refrigerator hums. The floorboards settle. The clock ticks. But this silence was absolute. It was the silence of a tomb. I walked into the living room. The hardwood floors, which Etta used to polish every Sunday, were scuffed and scratched. Deep gouges marked the wood where heavy furniture had been dragged carelessly toward the door. My leather armchair was gone. The bookshelf, which held 3 generations of family photos and my collection of first-edition jazz biographies, was gone. But the worst part was the corner by the window. That was where the grand piano stood. Etta played that piano every evening until arthritis took her hands. After she passed, I kept it tuned. I would sit there sometimes and just touch the keys, imagining I could hear her playing Duke Ellington. Now there was just a dust outline in the shape of a piano, a ghost on the floor. I felt a tightness in my chest. It was not a heart attack. It was rage, pure, molten rage. They had not just stolen my property. They had stripped the flesh off the bones of my memories. A sharp knock at the back door made me spin around. I gripped my cane, ready to swing. If it was one of Braden's movers coming back for the copper wiring, they were going to regret it. But it was not a mover. It was Mrs. Miller from next door. She was shivering in her bathrobe, clutching a cardboard box to her chest. Her eyes were wide with fear. "Winston, She gasped. "Oh, thank God. I saw the taxi. I saw you come in." She stepped inside, her eyes darting around the empty kitchen. "I thought you were dead, Winston. That young man, your son-in-law, he told the movers you had passed away. He said he was liquidating the estate." I stood straight, adjusting my coat. "I am very much alive, Martha." Mrs. Miller began to cry. Tears streamed down her wrinkled cheeks. "It was awful, Winston. It was absolutely awful. They came yesterday morning. Big trucks. Men with tattoos and cigarettes. They didn't pack things. They just threw them. I saw them toss your dining chairs into the truck like firewood. I tried to stop them. I told them to be careful. That young man Braden, he just laughed at me. He told me to go back inside and mind my own business before he bought my house and evicted me too." I placed a hand on her shoulder. She was trembling. "It is okay, Martha. You did what you could." "No." She shook her head violently. "No, I didn't. I should have called the police. But I was scared." He looked so unhinged. He was drinking right there on the lawn at 10 in the morning. "But Winston, look." She held out the cardboard box. Her hands were shaking so hard the box rattled. "I saw him carrying this out," she whispered. He was walking toward the dumpster they had rented, the big metal one in the driveway. He was holding this like it was trash, like it was nothing. I ran out, I grabbed his arm, I told him he couldn't throw this away. He pushed me, Winston. He actually pushed me, but I didn't let go. I snatched it from him. He just laughed and said, "Fine, you keep the old witch." My blood ran cold. I looked into the box. Resting on a bed of old newspaper was a ceramic urn. It was blue, hand-painted with white lilies, Eda's favorite flower. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Braden had sold the furniture for money. I understood that. Greed is a human motivation. But this was not greed. This was evil. He had tried to throw my wife into a dumpster. He had held her remains in his hands and called her a witch. I reached into the box. The ceramic was cold against my skin. I lifted the urn out with both hands, cradling it against my chest. I closed my eyes. I could feel the weight of it, the only physical thing I had left of the woman who had loved me for 40 years. "Thank you, Martha," I said. My voice was a whisper, but it felt like thunder in my throat. "You have no idea what you have done." Mrs. Miller wiped her eyes. "I couldn't let him do it, Winston. I just couldn't." "Go home, Martha," I said gently. "Lock your doors. Do not answer them for anyone but me." She nodded, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. She looked at me one last time, and for a moment she didn't see the polite neighbor who raked leaves on Saturdays. She saw something else. She saw the man who used to stare down organized crime syndicates for a living. She hurried out the back door. I carried Eda into the study. This room, too, was stripped. My mahogany desk was gone. My computer was gone. But I didn't look at the empty space. I looked at the wall behind where the desk used to be. The painting of the Chicago skyline had been ripped down. Behind it, the wall safe was exposed. It wasn't unlocked. It was drilled. Braden had not guessed the combination. He had hired a locksmith, probably one of his shady contacts, to drill the core. The safe door hung open, twisted and mangled metal. I peered inside. It was empty. Braden must have screamed with joy when he opened this safe. Inside, I had kept a stack of bearer bonds and a leather pouch of diamonds. Or at least, that is what they looked like. The bonds were expired prints from the 1980s, voided and worthless, kept as souvenirs from a case I worked on. The diamonds were high-grade cubic zirconia theatrical props I had bought online for $50. He had stolen trash thinking it was treasure, but he had also stolen the hard drive. I smiled in the empty room. It was a cold, humorless smile. The hard drive in that safe was labeled encrypted financial records, do not touch. Braden probably thought it contained the keys to my offshore accounts. He was likely plugging it into his laptop right now in that hotel suite in Vegas trying to crack the password. He didn't know that the hard drive contained a rootkit virus. As soon as he accessed it, it would silently copy every keystroke, every password, and every GPS location from his device and send it directly to a secure server. I set Eda's urn down gently on the floor, the only respectful place left in the house. I took out my phone. I dialed Sloan again. She answered immediately. "I told you not to call unless it was an emergency, Winston. We need radio silence." He threw Eda in the trash, I said. The line went dead silent. I could hear Sloan's breathing stop. She knew Eda. She had been at the funeral. She knew that Etta was the only reason I had retired instead of working until I died. "Say that again," Sloane said. Her voice was no longer professional. It was dangerous. "He tried to throw her urn in the dumpster," I repeated. "My neighbor saved it, and he drilled the safe. He took the bait drive." "Okay," Sloane said. The word came out like a gunshot. "The plan just changed. We are not just going for financial recovery anymore. We are going for total destruction." "I want him to feel it, Sloane," I said. "I don't just want him in jail. I want him to know who put him there. I want him to lose everything before the handcuffs even touch his skin." "He is in Vegas," Sloane said. "I can have a private investigator at his hotel in 20 minutes. We can serve him the injunction publicly." "No," I said. I looked around the empty room, the scars on the floor, the hole in the wall. "I am going to Vegas." "Winston, you have a heart condition," she warned. "My heart is fine," I said. "It is cold as ice. Book me the next flight. And call your contact at the casino. I need access to their security feed. Braden wants to live like a high roller. I am going to make sure he crashes like one." I hung up the phone. I picked up the urn again. I would not leave her here in this empty shell of a house. I found my old gym bag in the closet by the entryway, one of the few things Braden deemed too worthless to steal. I wrapped the urn in my scarf and placed it inside the bag. "We are going on a trip, Etta," I whispered. "We are going to see our son-in-law." I walked out of the house. I didn't look back at the sold sign. That sign was a lie. This house wasn't sold. It was a crime scene. And the criminal was currently drinking champagne 3 time zones away, unaware that the judge, jury, and executioner was boarding a plane to meet him. As I walked down the driveway, the wind picked up, swirling the dead leaves around my boots. I felt a strange surge of energy. For 2 years I had been the quiet, grieving widower. I had been the passive father-in-law who wrote checks and looked the other way. That man died the moment Braden touched this urn. The man walking to the curb to hail a taxi was someone else entirely. I was the man who had brought down the Chicago syndicate in '98. I was the man who could find a missing dime in $1 million ledger. Braden had made the classic mistake. He judged a book by its cover. He saw gray hair and a cane, and he saw a victim. He forgot that old predators are the most dangerous ones. We are the ones who survived. I got into the taxi. "O'Hare Airport," I told the driver, "and step on it." The driver looked at me in the mirror. "You going on vacation, Pop?" I looked at the gym bag on the seat beside me. "No," I said. "I am going on a hunting trip. Las Vegas does not sleep, and neither does greed." While I was sitting in a metal tube at 30,000 feet tracking my prey across the country, Braden was touching down in the desert. He did not waste a single second. From the moment the wheels of their plane hit the tarmac, he began a performance that would have made a Roman emperor blush. He was not just spending money, he was devouring it. He was trying to fill the hollow space inside himself with things that shimmered. I know exactly what he did because I have the receipts, I have the timestamps. And later I had the testimony of the valet who parked the car Braden rented. It was a bright red convertible Italian with an engine that roared like a wounded animal. Braden did not just rent it, he demanded it. He threw his credit card, my credit card, onto the counter and told the clerk he wanted the most expensive vehicle on the lot. He told the man he had just come into a massive inheritance. He lied without blinking. To Braden, the truth was just an inconvenience to be discarded when it no longer served him. He drove down the strip with the top down, the neon lights reflecting in his sunglasses. Zoe sat in the passenger seat. In the security footage from the hotel entrance, she looks small. She is shrinking, but Braden is expanding. He tossed the keys to the valet and handed the boy a $100 bill. "Keep it close," he said, loud enough for the people in the lobby to hear. "I might want to take it for a spin later." He checked them into the presidential suite. Of course he did. He did not want a room, he wanted a palace. But the worst part wasn't the spending. It was the conversation he had while Zoe was in the bathroom freshening up. He thought he was alone. He thought he was safe. He pulled out his phone and called his friends, a group of men who wore boat shoes and polo shirts, and talked about the stock market despite never having made a real trade in their lives. I stood on the balcony of the Bellagio Brad and told them, his voice carrying over the noise of the fountains below. "You should see it, guys. It is magnificent. And the best part, the old man paid for it." "Yeah, Winston. He is probably sitting in the dark right now eating cat food." He laughed. It was a cruel, ugly sound. I listened to the recording of that call later. It was painful, but it was necessary. It confirmed everything I had suspected about my son-in-law. "You know how it is with those people," Braden said, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "They hoard cash, they don't know how to invest, they don't know how to enjoy life. He sat on that house for 30 years like a dragon guarding gold. I just liberated it. I am doing the economy a favor. Honestly, I did him a favor. Now he doesn't have to worry about property taxes. He can just go to a state home where he belongs. He reduced my entire life, my 40 years of service to this country, my dedication to my family down to a racial stereotype of a hoarder who didn't deserve his own wealth. He believed that because he was young and white and handsome, he was entitled to the fruits of my labor. He believed the world owed him a living." Zoe came out of the bathroom then. I could hear the hesitation in her footsteps. She was wearing a dress he had bought her, something flashy and revealing that she looked uncomfortable in. Braden ended the call immediately. He put on his smile, the one that used to fool me, the one that convinced my daughter to marry him. "Ready for dinner, babe?" he asked. "We are going to eat like kings tonight." Zoe did not look like a queen. She looked like a prisoner. They went to one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. Crystal chandeliers, velvet chairs, waiters who spoke French. Braden ordered everything. Caviar, Wagyu beef, a bottle of wine that cost more than my first car. He was manic. He was talking a mile a minute, planning a future that was built on sand. "We are going to buy a boat," he said, waving a fork. "We will dock it in Miami, and we need a new apartment, something modern. Glass walls, none of that old brick garbage your dad liked." Zoe put her fork down. She had barely touched her food. "Braden," she said softly. Her voice was trembling. "I tried to call Dad again. He is not picking up." Braden's face darkened instantly. The charm evaporated. He put his wine glass down with a sharp clink. "Why are you calling him Zoe?" he asked. His tone was not angry yet, but it was warning. "Because he is my father," she said, "and we just took everything he owns. Braden, what if he has nowhere to go? What if he is sick? He was at the hospital this morning." Braden reached across the table and took her hand. It looked like a romantic gesture, but I knew he was squeezing her fingers hard enough to hurt. "He is fine, Zoe," Braden said, his voice dropping to that smooth, manipulative register he had mastered. "Listen to me. Your father is a manipulator. He has been controlling you your whole life with his silence and his guilt trips. He wants you to worry. That is how he keeps you on a leash. But the house—" Zoe started. "The house was a burden," Braden interrupted. "He hated that house. He was just too stubborn to leave. We helped him. And look at us, Zoe. Look at this life. This is what you deserve. Your father wanted you to be small. He wanted you to be a little teacher living in a little apartment. I want you to be a star. Do you understand? I did this for you." He made himself the hero of a crime he committed against her own blood. He twisted her love for me into a weakness. He made her doubt her own memories of a father who had carried her on his shoulders and taught her to ride a bike. Zoe looked down at the table. She nodded slowly. She was too tired to fight him. She had been fighting his influence for 2 years and losing every day. "Okay," she whispered. "I am sorry." "Don't be sorry," Braden said, leaning back and signaling the waiter. "Be rich." The waiter arrived with the leather folder containing the bill. Braden didn't even look at the total. He didn't care if it was $5,000 or $50,000. In his mind, the well was bottomless. He pulled out the black credit card, my black credit card, the one linked to the account he thought he had drained. He placed it on the tray with a flourish. "Put a 20% tip on there, my good man," he said to the waiter. The waiter bowed and walked away. Braden smiled at Zoe. "See, this is the life. No worries, no budgets, just freedom." He picked up his wine glass again, toasting to himself. He was already mentally spending the next $1,000,000. He was thinking about the boat in Miami. He was thinking about the suit he would wear to the wedding tomorrow. 5 minutes passed. The waiter did not return. Braden checked his watch. He tapped his fingers on the table. "Service is a little slow for a 5-star joint," he muttered. Then the waiter appeared. He was not smiling anymore. He was accompanied by the floor manager, a man in a severe gray suit with hands clasped behind his back. Braden looked up, annoyed. "Is there a problem? Did you lose the card?" The waiter stopped at the table. He held the little black folder with both hands. "Sir," the waiter said, his voice discreet but audible enough for the nearby tables to hear, "I am afraid the transaction was declined." Braden laughed. It was a reflex, a sound of pure disbelief. "Don't be ridiculous," he said. "Run it again. There is nearly $1,000,000 on that card." "We ran it 3 times, sir," the manager stepped in. The bank has flagged the card. The code is distinct. It says, stolen or lost. The air in the restaurant seemed to vanish. The clinking of silverware at other tables stopped. People were looking. Braden's face turned a shade of red that clashed with the velvet curtains. "It is not stolen," he hissed, standing up. "I am the authorized user. My father-in-law authorized it. Call the bank, right now." "I cannot call your bank, sir," the manager said coldly. "But I can call the police if you cannot provide another form of payment. The bill is $4,200. Braden scrambled for his wallet. He pulled out another card, his personal card. He threw it on the table. "Use this one," he snapped. "Stupid bank algorithms. I will have someone fired for this in the morning." The manager took the second card. He walked away to a terminal near the wall. Braden stood there adjusting his jacket, trying to look like a misunderstood billionaire. "It is just a glitch, babe," he told Zoe, who was now pale as a sheet. "Banks get nervous when you spend big money. They are trying to protect us." The manager returned in 30 seconds. He held the second card between two fingers like it was a dirty tissue. "Declined," the manager said. "Insufficient funds." Braden froze. That was impossible. He had maxed out his cards, yes, but he had transferred $10,000 from my account to his personal account just before the flight. A little walking around money. He checked his phone. He opened his banking app. He stared at the screen. His balance was zero, not just zero, it was negative. The fees had eaten whatever was left. The transfer he thought he had made never arrived. For the first time since he landed, Braden looked at Zoe not with superiority, but with panic. "Do you have any cash?" he hissed at her. Zoe shook her head. "You told me not to bring my purse. You said you would pay for everything." The manager took a step closer. Two security guards, large men with earpieces, materialized from the shadows of the dining room. "Sir," the manager said, "if you cannot pay, we will have to escort you to the security office until the authorities arrive." Braden looked around the room. The illusion was shattering. The golden light was starting to look harsh. The other diners were whispering. He was not the king of Vegas. He was a man who couldn't buy dinner. "It is a mistake," Braden shouted, his voice cracking. "My father-in-law. He is playing games. He is a crazy old man." He pulled out his phone. His hands were shaking so hard he almost dropped it. "I'm going to call the bank," he yelled, "and then I'm going to sue everyone in this building." He dialed the number on the back of my credit card. He put it on speaker, wanting Zoe and the manager to hear the bank apologize to him. "Welcome to Chase Private Client Services," the automated voice said. "We have detected unusual activity on your account. Please hold for a fraud specialist." Braden smirked at the manager. "See unusual activity. Just a fraud check." Then the music stopped. A human voice came on the line. But it was not a customer service representative. "This is Agent Miller from the Federal Fraud Division," the voice said. "We are tracking the location of a device attempting to access the accounts of Mr. Winston King, who is speaking." Braden dropped the phone. It clattered onto the expensive china plate, cracking the screen. He looked at Zoe. For the first time, he looked truly terrified. "Run," he whispered. But there was nowhere to run. The security guards were already boxing him in. And I, Winston, was currently walking through the automatic doors of the McCarran International Airport, gripping my cane, ready to close the net. Sloan did not offer me coffee or sympathy when I walked into her office on the 42nd floor. She offered me a seat at the war table. Her office was a fortress of glass and mahogany overlooking the gray expanse of Lake Michigan. It smelled of old paper and expensive leather, a scent that always calmed me. Sloan was a woman who could stop a corporate merger with a single raised eyebrow. She had been my friend for 20 years and my lawyer for 10. Today she was neither. Today she was my general. She pushed a thick file folder across the polished desk. The label on the front read, "The Etta and Winston King Irrevocable Trust." "It is done," Sloan said, her voice crisp and efficient. "I have flagged the title transfer with the county clerk. I have notified the fraud division of the bank, and I have prepared the affidavit for the Las Vegas Police Department." I sat down and ran my hand over the file. To anyone else, this was just a stack of legal documents. To me, it was a shield I had forged in the fires of my own paranoia. "Braden thinks he won," I said quietly. "He thinks he used my own signature against me." Sloan leaned back in her chair, a small, dangerous smile playing on her lips. "He used a power of attorney to sell a house that you do not legally own, Winston. He tried to empty a swimming pool with a teaspoon. This is the part of the story that Braden never understood. He never understood it because he never bothered to ask. He saw the house, the cars, the bank accounts, and he assumed they were mine to give. He assumed that because I was the patriarch, I held the keys. But 5 years ago, I changed the locks. It was right after Etta got her diagnosis. We were sitting in this very office looking at the future, and we realized that we were vulnerable. We saw how the world looks at aging black couples who have managed to build a little wealth. We saw the nursing homes that drain savings. We saw the distant relatives who suddenly appear with open hands. And yes, even back then, I saw the boys Zoe was dating. They were always the same type: flashy, ambitious, and utterly hollow. So I made a decision. I took myself out of the equation. I explained it to Etta that night. I told her we were going to build a vault that no one could crack, not even us. We transferred everything into an irrevocable trust. The house on 4th Street, the primary investment portfolios, the life insurance policies. Once those assets went into the trust, they no longer belonged to Winston King. They belonged to the entity, and the entity had strict rules. To sell the house to access the principal funds, you needed the signature of the grantor, which was me, and the independent trustee, which was Sloan. A power of attorney allows someone to act on my behalf as a person. It allows them to sign my checks, access my personal checking account, and make medical decisions. But it does not give them the power to act as the trustee. Braden had walked into the county recorder's office with a power of attorney for Winston King. But Winston King did not own the house. The trust did. Technically, the sale he made this morning is void ab initio, Sloan explained, tapping a pen against the desk. From the beginning, it has no legal standing. The deed he signed is worthless paper. The company that bought it, this Rapid Home Solutions, they do not own the property. They just handed a fraudster a check for a house he had no right to sell. And the bank account, I asked. Sloan sighed. That is the painful part. The account he drained the $850,000 that was the decoy. I closed my eyes. It still hurt to lose that money, even if I knew it was necessary. When we set up the trust, I knew I needed to leave something outside the walls. I needed a honeypot. If a thief breaks into your house and finds nothing, he keeps tearing the place apart until he finds the safe. But if he finds a stack of cash on the kitchen counter, he takes it and runs. He thinks he scored. He stops looking. I kept that personal account active. I kept a healthy balance in it. It was my operating capital, yes, but it was also a trap. I knew that if Braden ever made a move, he would go for the low-hanging fruit. He would see that balance, and his greed would blind him to the rest. He took the bait, Sloan. He took every cent. And in doing so, Sloan said, her voice dropping an octave, he committed wire fraud. He committed elder financial abuse. He committed grand larceny. If he had just tried to hack the trust, we would be fighting a civil suit. But because he used your power of attorney to steal from your personal account, he crossed the line into federal criminal territory. He didn't just steal your money, Winston. He stole his own freedom. The brilliance of the trap was in its simplicity. Braden thought the power of attorney was his weapon. In reality, it was the evidence. It proved premeditation. It proved he had access, that he had a fiduciary duty to protect me, and that he violated it in the most egregious way possible. He thinks I am senile, I said, opening my eyes. He told Zoe I was losing it. That is why he got me to sign the paper. Sloan opened the folder and pulled out a document I had signed the same day I signed Braden's paper. It was a notarized affidavit from my cardiologist and my neurologist certifying that I was of sound mind and body. We prepared for this. Winston, Sloan reminded me. You knew he would play the dementia card. You were 5 steps ahead of him while he was still tying his shoes. Just then my phone rang. I looked at the screen. It was an unknown number, but the area code was local. Answer it, Sloan said. Put it on speaker. I swiped the screen. Hello? Is this Winston King? The voice on the other end was rough aggressive. It sounded like a man who was used to bullying widows into selling their homes for pennies. Speaking. This is Frank from Rapid Home Solutions. We bought your property on 4th Street this morning from your agent, Mr. Braden Vance. We have a problem, Mr. King. A big problem. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on Sloan's mahogany desk. Oh, I know you have a problem, Frank. I was just discussing it with my lawyer. Don't give me that lawyer crap, Frank spat. We sent a crew to secure the property, and some old lady next door is screaming about calling the cops. And now my title company is telling me there is a cloud on the deed. They are saying something about a trust. What are you trying to pull, old man? We paid cash. That deal is done. I let the silence stretch. I let him sweat. I could hear the background noise of a busy office, phones ringing, people shouting. These were bottom feeders. They bought distressed properties, slapped a coat of paint on them, and sold them for double. They didn't care about families. They cared about margins. You bought a stolen house. Frank, I said, my voice calm and cold. What? You didn't do your due diligence, Frank. You saw a young man with a desperate look and a cheap suit and you thought you could score a quick deal. You didn't check the grantor. You didn't check the trust documents. You just handed him a check. There was a pause. Then the bluster vanished, replaced by genuine fear. Look, we have a contract. You have a piece of paper signed by a thief, I interrupted. Now here is how this is going to go. You are going to tell me exactly how much you paid him. You are going to send me a copy of that check. And you are going to tell me exactly what bank he deposited it in. Why should I help you? Frank demanded, though his voice was wavering. I want my money back. I am going to sue you. You can try, I said. You can sue the trust. We have more lawyers than you have employees. Or you can help me catch the man who ripped us both off. If you cooperate, if you give me the paper trail right now, I will forget that your crew broke my back door lock. I will forget that you tried to occupy a house you do not legally own. I will leave you out of the federal indictment. Federal. Frank squeaked. He crossed state lines with the money, Frank. That makes it FBI jurisdiction. Do you want the FBI seizing your files? Do you want them looking at all your other deals? I could practically hear Frank's heart stopping. Men like Frank lived on the edge of the law. The last thing they wanted was a spotlight. Okay, Frank stammered. Okay, Mr. King, I am emailing you the file right now. He wanted a wire transfer. We wired it to a generic account in the Cayman Islands. He said it was for tax purposes. The Caymans. Of course. Braden thought he was being slick. He thought he was James Bond. Send it, I said. And Frank, get your crew off my lawn. If I see one more van in my driveway, I will have them arrested for trespassing. I hung up the phone. Sloane was smiling. She tapped the keyboard of her laptop. The Caymans, she mused. That actually makes it easier. We have a treaty for fraud cases. And since he used a U.S. bank to initiate the wire, we can freeze it before it even settles. She looked at me. You have him, Winston? We have the paper trail. We have the fraudulent deed. We have the trust protection. We can end this right now. I can make one call to the Las Vegas police and have him picked up at the buffet. I stood up and walked to the window. I looked down at the city. Cars were moving like ants in a colony. Everyone rushing, everyone thinking they were in control. No, I said, not yet. Sloane paused. Winston, you are playing a dangerous game. He is with Zoe. That is exactly why I have to go there, I said. I turned back to face her. If you arrest him now, he spins a story. He tells Zoe it was a misunderstanding. He tells her I framed him. He is a manipulator, Sloane. He is good at it. If I take him down from a distance, Zoe might still pity him. She might still believe him. I need her to see it. I continued. I need her to see the monster when the mask falls off. I need her to be sitting next to him when the handcuffs click. I walked back to the desk and picked up the file. I am going to Vegas, Sloane. Keep the freeze on the money silent for another 4 hours. Let him think he is rich. Let him run up the tab. Let him dig the hole so deep he can never climb out. Sloane nodded slowly. She understood. This wasn't just about the money. It was about saving my daughter from a lifetime of abuse. It was about breaking the spell. I will call my contact at the casino, Sloane said. You will have full access to their security team. Just be careful, Winston. A cornered rat bites. I adjusted my coat. I gripped my cane. I am counting on it, I said. I left the office. The elevator ride down was fast. My ears popped. I was descending from the ivory tower of the law back into the streets. I had the legal trap set. The trust was the cage and the decoy money was the cheese. Braden had walked right in. Now all I had to do was slam the door. I headed for the airport. The flight to Vegas was 4 hours. 4 hours for Braden to enjoy his last taste of freedom. 4 hours for me to prepare for the hardest thing a father ever has to do. I had to watch my daughter's heart break so that her life could be saved. I checked my phone one last time. A message from Frank popped up. An image of a wire transfer receipt. $400,000. He had sold my $1 million home for less than half its value just to get quick cash. The disrespect burned in my gut, but I pushed it down. I converted it into fuel. "I am coming, Braden," I whispered to the cold Chicago air, "and I am bringing hell with me." While I was navigating the sterile corridors of O'Hare Airport, dragging my legs slightly as the adrenaline began to wear off, Braden was discovering that the high life in Las Vegas has a very dark underbelly. The timeline of events I reconstructed later showed that exactly 40 minutes after his credit cards were declined, the real bill came due. And this bill was not from the hotel management. It was from the investors Braden had courted in back alleys before he even left Chicago. You see, a man like Braden does not just steal, he leverages. He had been so confident that the sale of my house was a done deal that he had taken out a bridge loan. He had borrowed $50,000 in cash from a group of men who do not use credit scores or contracts. They use baseball bats and brass knuckles. He needed that cash to flash around at the poker tables to look like a whale before the wire transfer from the house sale cleared. He told them he would pay them back double in 24 hours. He was in the presidential suite pacing the floor, sweat staining the armpits of his expensive shirt. The hotel manager had given him 1 hour to sort out the payment before eviction, but that was the least of his worries. There was a knock at the door. It was not the rhythmic, polite knock of room service. It was a heavy, authoritative thud. Braden checked the peephole. He did not see the manager. He saw 2 men in dark suits. They were not hotel security. I knew these types of men. During my years at the IRS, I saw them often in the background of surveillance photos. They were enforcers. They were the muscle that comes to collect when the numbers do not add up. Braden opened the door. He tried to put on his winning smile, the one that had charmed my daughter for 2 years. "Hey guys," he said, "you are early. The transfer is just stuck in the cloud. You know how banks are." The first man, a giant with a neck as thick as a tree trunk, pushed past Braden into the room without a word. The second man closed the door and locked it. The air in the suite changed instantly. The smell of expensive perfume and fresh flowers was replaced by the metallic scent of violence. "We do not care about the cloud, Braden," the first man said. His voice was low and gravelly. "We care about the 50,000, plus the VIG. That is the interest, Braden. It is 10% a day, and the day is almost over." Braden retreated backward until his legs hit the edge of the coffee table. He almost tripped. "Look, I have the money," he stammered. "I sold a house. $1 million house. The money is wired. It is just a fraud check. My father-in-law is messing with the accounts. Just give me until tomorrow morning." The second man walked over to the minibar. He picked up a crystal glass and examined it in the light. Then he dropped it. It shattered on the marble floor with a sound like a gunshot. "You have until midnight," the man said. "If the money is not in our hand by midnight, we take it out in trade." And Braden, "We do not trade in stocks. We trade in kneecaps." They turned and left. The silence they left behind was louder than the noise of the strip outside. Braden stood there shaking. He was a soft man. He had never been in a real fight in his life. He was used to corporate theft, to lies told on paper. He was not prepared for the visceral reality of physical consequences. Zoe came out of the bedroom. She had been crying. Her mascara was running down her cheeks. "Who was that, Braden?" she asked. Her voice was small and frightened. "Nobody," Braden snapped. He ran his hands through his hair, pulling at the roots. "Just business associates." He looked at her, really looked at her. And in that moment, the love he claimed to have for her evaporated completely. In its place was raw, desperate utility. She was no longer his wife-to-be. She was a tool. She was the only link he had to the money that could save his life. "Give me your phone," he demanded. Zoe blinked, confused. "What?" "Your phone," he screamed. He lunged at her and snatched it from her hand. He unlocked it with the passcode he had memorized because a controlling partner always knows the passcodes. He dialed my number. It rang and rang and rang. I saw the call coming in as I sat at the gate waiting to board. I let it go to voicemail. I needed him to marinate in his own panic. He called again and again. When I didn't answer, he threw the phone onto the sofa. It bounced harmlessly, mocking him. He turned on Zoe. "You have to call him," he said. He was breathing hard, his eyes wide and manic. "Call him and tell him you are sick. Tell him you are in the hospital. Tell him we need money for a surgery." Zoe recoiled as if he had slapped her. "Braden, what are you talking about? I am not sick. I don't care," Braden roared. He grabbed her by the shoulders. His fingers dug into her flesh. "Do you want to end up on the street? Do you want those men to come back and hurt us? Your father is doing this." He froze the accounts. He is punishing us. You have to break him. You are his little girl. If you tell him you are dying, he will unlock the funds. Cry, Zoe. Cry for your life. Zoe looked at him with horror. She was finally seeing the man behind the mask. This was not the charming entrepreneur she had fallen in love with. This was a cornered rat who would use her as a human shield. "I won't do it," Zoe whispered. "I won't lie to my dad. Not for money." Braden shoved her backward. She fell onto the plush sofa. "You are useless," he spat. "Just like him. Useless and weak." He turned away from her and walked to the sliding glass doors that led to the balcony. He unlocked the latch and slid the door open. The desert wind rushed in hot and dry. The noise of Las Vegas assaulted the room sirens' music, the roar of the city that devoured souls. Braden stepped out onto the balcony. He gripped the railing. His knuckles were white. He looked down. We were on the 35th floor. The cars below looked like toys. The people were invisible specks. He was running out of options. The bank account was frozen. The house sale was void. The loan sharks were coming back at midnight. He needed a miracle. Or he realized with a sickening jolt of clarity he needed a tragedy. I know what he was thinking because I found the search history on his laptop later. I found the documents he had downloaded just days before the trip. Life insurance. 2 years ago when they got engaged, I had insisted on a policy for Zoe. It was a standard protective measure, or so I told them. I paid the premiums. The payout was $2 million. And the primary beneficiary in the event of her accidental death was her fiancé. Me. But Braden had argued successfully to be added as the secondary beneficiary once they were married. But they were not married yet. However, Braden didn't know the specifics of the policy law. He just knew there was a policy. And he knew that if Zoe fell, if there was a terrible tragic accident on the balcony of a hotel suite while she was intoxicated. He turned around slowly. He looked at Zoe through the glass. She was sitting on the sofa, her face buried in her hands, sobbing. She was vulnerable. She was alone. She trusted him despite everything. A darkness settled over Braden's face that I will never forget. I saw it later on the security footage from the hallway camera that caught a glimpse of him through the open door. It was the look of a man weighing the value of a human life against his own survival. He stepped back into the room. The wind from the open door blew the curtains wildly, creating dancing shadows on the walls. "Babe," he said. His voice changed. It softened. It became terrifyingly gentle. "I am sorry. I am just stressed. Come here. Come look at the view. It will calm us down." Zoe looked up. Her eyes were swollen. She wanted to believe him. She wanted the nightmare to end. She stood up shakily. Braden held out his hand. "Come on," he cooed. "Let's just get some fresh air. Just you and me." He was luring her to the edge. He was planning to push her. He was going to trade my daughter's life for an insurance payout to clear his gambling debts. I was sitting on the plane when the flight attendant told me to turn off my phone. I stared at the dark screen. A cold feeling, colder than the Chicago winter, spread through my chest. I knew Braden. I knew he was a narcissist, but I had underestimated his desperation. I closed my eyes and prayed to Etta. I prayed that I was wrong. I prayed that he was just a thief, not a killer. But deep down in the pit of my stomach, I knew the truth. Braden had run out of road. And when a man like that runs out of road, he doesn't stop. He drives off the cliff and he takes everyone else with him. The plane began to taxi. I gripped the armrest. Every minute in the air was a minute Zoe was alone with a monster. I needed to be faster. I needed to be there. Because the man waiting for me in Vegas was no longer just my son-in-law. He was a target. And I was the bullet coming to stop him. The cabin lights were dimmed as the plane cut through the night sky over Nebraska. Most of the passengers around me were sleeping their heads lolling against the windows, dreaming of jackpots and buffets. I was wide awake. The reading light above me cast a harsh cone of illumination onto the tray table where I had spread out the digital dossier Sloan had compiled. Braden Vance was not his real name. Or rather, it was the name he was using this decade. I swiped through the PDF on my tablet. The blue light reflected in my glasses, illuminating the faces of the women who came before my daughter. There was Sarah, a nurse from Denver. She had a kind smile and a savings account she had built up over 15 years of double shifts. In the photo taken 3 years ago, she looked radiant, standing next to a man who looked exactly like my son-in-law, only with slightly longer hair. In the photo taken last month, she looked 20 years older. She was living in a trailer park. Her credit was ruined. She had filed for bankruptcy after her husband disappeared with the equity from her home. Then there was Michelle from Austin, a school principal. She lost her pension. She lost her car. When she tried to press charges, this chameleon had produced documents claiming everything was a gift. He had gaslit her until she questioned her own sanity. I looked at the timeline. Braden did not just stumble into our lives. He targeted us. He had met Zoe at a charity gala, an event she only attended because I bought the table. He had profiled her. He saw a sweet, trusting teacher with a father who had worked for the government. He saw stability that he could parasitize. I felt a wave of nausea that had nothing to do with turbulence. I had let this wolf sit at my dinner table. I had let him carve the turkey at Thanksgiving. I had listened to his empty stories about consulting firms and market trends, suspecting he was a liar, but never imagining he was a predator of this magnitude. I closed the file. My hand was shaking not from age, but from a cold, simmering fury. I was done being the skeptical father-in-law. I was done being the passive observer. The man sitting in first class on a different flight, sipping champagne and laughing at my expense, had made a fatal error. He assumed that because I played by the rules my whole life, I did not know how to break them. He forgot that to catch a monster, you have to know exactly how the monster thinks. I put the tablet away. I stared out into the black void beyond the window. I did not see the stars. I saw only the reflection of a man who was ready to do violence to protect his blood. The wheels touched down in Las Vegas with a screech of burning rubber. The pilot welcomed us to the entertainment capital of the world. I grabbed my cane and my gym bag. I did not wait for the assistance crew to bring a wheelchair, though they offered. I marched up the jet bridge with a pace that made younger men step aside. The airport was an assault on the senses. Slot machines dinged and chirped right at the gate. Tourists in Hawaiian shirts shouted over the noise. It was a city built on the promise of easy money, a city that devoured the hopeful and spat out the desperate. It was Braden's natural habitat. It was not mine. I moved through the crowd like a ghost. I did not head for the taxi line immediately. I headed for the black town car waiting at the curb of the private terminal exit. A man in a dark suit stood by the rear door. He was 6'4" with shoulders that blocked out the neon lights. "Mr. King," the man said. He opened the door before I even reached him. "Hello, Marcus," I said. Marcus Thorne was the director of security for the Olympus Casino and Hotel where Braden had booked the presidential suite. 10 years ago, Marcus was a security contractor facing a terrifying audit. He had made a mistake on his filings, a clerical error that threatened to wipe out his military pension. I was the auditor assigned to his case. I could have crushed him. I could have followed the letter of the law and left him destitute. Instead, I spent 3 weekends of my own time helping him reconstruct his records, proving the error was innocent and saving his livelihood. He never forgot it. "You look good," Sir Marcus said as he slid into the driver's seat. "I look like hell, Marcus," I replied. "But thank you." "Is everything set up?" Marcus nodded, meeting my eyes in the rearview mirror. His expression was grim. "I have the feed isolated. My team is on standby. But Winston, you need to know, he is erratic. We had a report from the floor manager about a declined card incident. He made a scene. He is desperate." "Desperate men make mistakes," I said. "Desperate men make corpses," Sir Marcus corrected me gently. The car glided through the traffic of the Strip. Outside, the fake Eiffel Tower and the fountains danced. Inside, the air was cold and serious. This was the difference between Braden and me. Braden commanded attention with money he didn't have. I commanded loyalty with respect I had earned. Braden had to bribe people to like him. I had people who would drive into a war zone for me because I had treated them with dignity. We pulled into the underground service entrance of the Olympus. Marcus led me through a maze of concrete corridors, past the kitchens where chefs were shouting orders, past the laundry rooms where the smell of bleach was overpowering. We took a private elevator that required a retinal scan. When the doors opened, we were in the nerve center of the casino, the surveillance room. It was a cavernous space, dark and cool, lit only by the glow of 300 monitors covering the walls. Men and women sat at consoles, watching every card dealt, every dice thrown, every wallet opened. They were the silent gods of this city. Marcus led me to a private station in the corner. He typed a command into the keyboard. The large center screen flickered and changed. There they were, the presidential suite. High definition. I could see the sweat on Braden's forehead. I could see the way Zoe was sitting on the edge of the sofa, hugging her knees, looking small and terrified. "Audio?" I asked. Marcus handed me a headset. "It is directional," he said. "We can hear a pin drop." I put on the headset. The sound of the wind rattling the balcony door filled my ears. Then Braden's voice. It sounded tinny, distorted by the microphone, but the menace was clear. "Drink some water, Zoe," he was saying. "You look pale. You are making me nervous." On the screen, Braden was standing by the minibar. His back was to Zoe. His body blocked his hands from her view, but he did not block the camera angle from the ceiling. My breath hitched in my throat. I saw him reach into his jacket pocket. I saw the small, clear vial. It was not a prescription bottle. It was something he had bought on the street, something unregulated and dangerous. "Zoom in," I ordered. My voice was a bark. The operator next to Marcus punched a key. The image jumped forward. The pixels sharpened. Braden was unscrewing the cap of a water bottle. He tilted the vial. A fine white powder cascaded into the water. It dissolved instantly. He swirled the bottle, capping it again. The seal cracked with a tiny snap that I heard through the headset. "He is poisoning her," I whispered. The realization hit me like a physical blow to the chest. It wasn't just about the insurance money. It was about elimination. He wanted to wipe the slate clean. Marcus saw it too. He reached for his radio. "I am sending the tactical team. We are breaching the door." "No," I grabbed his wrist. My grip was iron. "Winston, he has a weaponized substance." Marcus argued, his eyes wide. "If you breach now, he dumps the water." I said, my mind racing at the speed of light. "He claims it was aspirin. He claims it was a supplement. He has a silver tongue, Marcus. He will talk his way out of it, and tomorrow he will try again when no one is watching. We need him to hand it to her. We need the intent to be undeniable. But if she drinks it..." Marcus started. "She won't," I said. I pulled out my phone. On the screen, Braden turned around. He put on that sick, charming smile. He walked toward the sofa, holding the bottle out like an offering of peace. "Here, babe," he said. "Just hydrate. We will figure this out." I watched my daughter reach for the bottle. Her hand was trembling. She trusted him. Even after the yelling, even after the lies, part of her still wanted to believe he was her protector. I typed the message on my phone. My fingers flew across the glass. "Run to the bathroom, lock the door, Dad is here." I hit send. On the screen, Zoe's phone lit up on the coffee table where Braden had thrown it. The screen flashed bright in the dim room. Braden looked down at the phone. "Who is texting you?" he demanded. Zoe looked at the phone. Then she looked at Braden. Then she looked at the bottle in his hand. The text preview was visible on the lock screen. I saw Zoe's eyes widen. I saw the moment the illusion finally shattered. She didn't look at him with love. She looked at him with the primal terror of a prey animal realizing the predator is in the cage. She didn't grab the phone. She didn't scream. She moved with a speed I didn't know she possessed. She bolted from the sofa, knocking the coffee table aside, and sprinted for the master bathroom. Braden lunged, but he was too slow. He dropped the bottle. It rolled across the carpet, the poison water sloshing inside. "Hey!" he screamed. "Open this door!" The sound of the lock clicking home was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. I ripped the headset off. "Now, Marcus," I said. "Now we breach. But I go in first." "Mr. King, that is against protocol," Marcus said, though he was already moving toward the door, signaling his team. "Protocol is for strangers," I said, tightening my grip on my cane until the wood creaked. "That is my daughter, and I am going to break every bone in his body before you put the cuffs on him." We ran for the elevator. My leg hurt. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird, but I felt stronger than I had in 20 years. The hunter was coming, and the wolf was trapped in the tower. Inside the presidential suite, the air conditioning was humming a low and steady drone that sounded like a dying engine. On the high-definition monitor in the security room, I could see every detail of the nightmare unfolding. The room was bathed in the artificial golden glow of the lamps Braden had turned on to set the mood, but the light did not make the room feel warm. It made it look sickly and yellow. Zoe was sitting on the edge of the velvet sofa. Her posture was broken. She looked smaller than I had ever seen her, as if the weight of the last 2 years was finally crushing her spine. She had her arms wrapped around her stomach and her head was bowed. She was crying silently. I could see her shoulders shaking with each suppressed sob. Braden was standing 5 feet away from her. He was holding the water bottle. The plastic bottle was sweating condensation that dripped onto the expensive carpet. Inside that clear liquid was a death sentence he had dissolved only moments ago. I watched his face closely. A man who is about to kill someone he claims to love does not look peaceful. He looks terrified. Beads of sweat were gathering on his upper lip and along his hairline. His eyes were darting around the room, checking the corners, checking the windows, checking the door, as if he expected the ghosts of his past to burst in and stop him. He was a cornered animal, and cornered animals are unpredictable. He took a step toward Zoe. His movements were jerky and unnatural. He forced a smile onto his face, but it did not reach his eyes. His eyes remained cold and dead. He sat down next to her on the sofa. The cushion sank under his weight. Zoe flinched away from him instinctively. Her body knew what her mind refused to accept. She knew she was in danger, but she did not know the danger was sitting right beside her holding a bottle of water. "Babe," Braden said softly. His voice through my headset was smooth, but I could hear the tremor in it. "You have to stop crying. You are going to make yourself sick. You are dehydrated. That is why you have a headache. That is why you are not thinking clearly." Zoe lifted her head. Her face was ravaged by tears. Her makeup was smeared under her eyes, making her look like a tragic doll. "I don't want water, Braden," she whispered. Her voice was hoarse. "I want to go home. I want to call my dad. Please, just let me call him. I know he will fix this." Braden's jaw tightened. I saw the muscles in his neck bunch up. He hated me. He hated that even when I was 1,000 miles away, I was the one she called out for. He hated that he could never compete with the safety I provided. He unscrewed the cap of the bottle. The sound of the plastic seal breaking was sharp and final. "We can call him later," Braden said soothingly. "But first you need to drink this. I put some electrolytes in it. It will help you calm down. You know I love you, right? I am doing this for us. We just need to get through tonight. Tomorrow everything will be better." He held the bottle out to her. The water sloshed gently against the sides. It looked so innocent. It was just water. It was the source of life. But in his hands it was a weapon. Zoe looked at the bottle. She licked her dry lips. She was thirsty. The crying had drained her. Her biological need for water was warring with her psychological instinct to flee. "Please," Braden pushed the bottle closer until the cold plastic touched her hand. "Do it for me. Show me you trust me. If you drink this, we can go to sleep. We can forget all about the money in the house. Just drink." I gripped the edge of the security console so hard my knuckles turned white. I was screaming inside my head, "Do not touch it, Zoe. Do not drink it." But she couldn't hear me. She slowly reached out her hand. Her fingers uncurled. She grasped the bottle. Braden released it. He leaned back, watching her with a hunger that made my stomach turn. He was waiting for the swallow. He was waiting for the end. Zoe raised the bottle to her lips. At that exact second, a thunderous knocking echoed through the room. Bam! 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 Zoe jumped. The sudden noise startled her so badly that water splashed out of the bottle and onto her dress. She lowered the bottle, gasping for air. Braden leaped to his feet as if he had been electrocuted. His face contorted in a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. The interruption had snapped the delicate thread of his manipulation. "Who is it?" Braden screamed at the door. His voice was not smooth anymore. It was a guttural roar. "Go away! We are sleeping!" The knocking came again, louder this time. It was the rhythm of authority. It was the rhythm of someone who would not be ignored. A muffled voice came through the thick wood of the hotel door. "Housekeeping. Check the minibar." It was a lie. It was Marcus's team stalling. It was a delay tactic I had orchestrated to buy seconds. But Braden did not know that. He only knew that the universe was conspiring against him. He looked at the door and then he looked back at Zoe. He was calculating. If he opened the door, they would see Zoe crying. They would see the mess. They might ask questions. But if he didn't open the door, they might use a keycard to enter. He marched to the door, stomping his feet like a petulant child. He grabbed the deadbolt, but he didn't open it. He put his mouth close to the crack. "Get the hell away from here," he yelled. "I did not order anything. If you do not leave in 5 seconds, I am calling the manager and getting you fired. Do you hear me? I will have your job." The voice outside was calm and persistent. "Sir, we have a sensor alert for the minibar. We just need to check the seal." Braden kicked the door. a physical, violent kick that shook the frame. I said, "Get out!" He stood there panting. His chest was heaving. He listened. The footsteps outside retreated. Silence returned to the hallway. Braden turned around. He ran a hand through his hair, messing up the perfect style he had spent an hour on that morning. He looked deranged. The mask had slipped completely now. He wasn't the charming fiancé. He was a desperate man trying to commit a murder and failing. He walked back to Zoe. She was staring at him with wide, terrified eyes. She had never seen him like this. She had never seen him violent. The water bottle was still in her hand, but she was holding it loosely now, resting it on her knee. "Why are you yelling?" she asked. Her voice was trembling. "It was just housekeeping." "They are spies," Braden hissed. He was pacing back and forth in front of the coffee table. "Everyone is spying on us. Your dad sent them. I know he did. He wants to ruin our wedding." He stopped pacing and looked at the bottle. He realized he was losing control of the narrative. He needed to get back on track. He needed her to drink the water before another interruption occurred. He knelt down in front of her. He put his hands on her knees. His grip was too tight. It was painful. "Baby, listen to me," Braden said, his eyes wide and intense. "We are under attack. We have to be strong. You need to take your medicine. Drink the water. Now." It wasn't a request anymore. It was a command. Zoe looked at the bottle. Then she looked at the phone lying on the table next to the empty champagne bucket. The screen was dark. "Why don't you drink some too?" she asked. It was a simple question, a logical question, but it hit Braden like a slap in the face. "I am not the one with the headache," he snapped. "Just drink the damn water, Zoe. Stop asking questions. Stop being difficult. Do you want me to help you drink it?" He reached for the bottle in her hand, trying to guide it to her mouth. He was going to force her. The pretense of love was gone. He was going to pour it down her throat if he had to. Suddenly, the phone on the table buzzed. It was a long vibration followed by the bright flash of the screen lighting up. In the dim room, it looked like a flare. Braden froze. He looked at the phone. He thought it was the bank. He thought it was the loan sharks. He thought it was the police. Paranoia paralyzed him for a split second. Zoe looked down. The phone was closer to her. She could see the notification banner clearly. It was a message. Sender Dad. The preview of the message was short. It was capitalized. It was urgent. Run to the bathroom. Lock the door. Dad is here. Time seemed to stop. I watched on the monitor as the words registered in my daughter's mind. I saw the gears turning. She looked at the message. Then she looked at the water bottle in Braden's hand. Then she looked at Braden's face. She saw the sweat. She saw the desperation. She saw the violence in his eyes. And suddenly everything clicked. The rushing, the isolation, the refusal to let her call me, the open balcony door, and now the forced water. She realized she was not looking at her husband. She was looking at her executioner. Braden saw her eyes change. He saw the realization dawn on her face. He knew she had seen the message. "Who is that?" he demanded, lunging for the phone. But Zoe was faster. Adrenaline is a powerful drug. It can make a tired, broken woman move with the speed of an Olympic athlete. She didn't grab the phone. She didn't try to argue. She threw the water bottle at him. It was a desperate act of survival. The open bottle struck Braden in the chest, splashing the poisoned water all over his expensive silk shirt. He gasped, flinching away from the liquid as if it were acid. He knew what was in it. He knew he couldn't let it touch his lips. Zoe used that moment of distraction. She pushed herself off the sofa and sprinted toward the master bathroom. "Hey," Braden screamed, slipping on the wet carpet as he tried to chase her. "Come back here." Zoe didn't look back. She ran barefoot across the marble floor. She reached the heavy oak door of the bathroom. She threw herself inside. Braden was right behind her. His fingertips brushed the wood just as she slammed it shut. I heard the distinct mechanical click of the deadbolt sliding home. Braden slammed his body against the door. Thud, thud. "Open this door, Zoe," he howled, pounding on the wood with both fists. "Open it right now or I will break it down. You are making a mistake. It is just water. It is just water." Inside the bathroom, I could not see Zoe anymore, but I knew she was backed into the corner, probably sitting in the empty bathtub, holding her knees to her chest, shaking. On the monitor, Braden was losing his mind. He kicked the door. He paced in a circle, pulling at his hair, screaming obscenities. He grabbed a heavy bronze lamp from the bedside table and smashed it against the wall. He was trapped. He knew it. The water was spilled. The girl was locked away. The police were coming. The walls were closing in. I stood up in the security room. I adjusted my jacket. I picked up my cane. I looked at Marcus. "Let's go," I said. The elevator ride up to the 35th floor took 45 seconds. Those were the longest 45 seconds of my life, but I was calm now. The worst outcome had been avoided. Zoe was safe behind a locked door. Now it was just me and Braden, and I had a lifetime of anger to deliver to him in person. The electronic lock on the door of the presidential suite beeped with a cheerful green light that felt completely out of place given the violence waiting on the other side. Marcus, the head of security, stepped back as he had promised. He gave me the space I needed. He understood that a father does not want an audience when he confronts the man who tried to kill his child. I pushed the heavy door open. It swung inward on silent hinges. The room smelled of chaos. It was a mixture of spilled champagne, expensive cologne, and the sour metallic scent of terror. Braden was standing by the bathroom door. He had a heavy bronze statue in his hand, raised high above his head, ready to bring it crashing down on the door handle. He was panting like a wild dog. His shirt was soaked in sweat and the poisoned water Zoe had thrown at him. He heard the door open and spun around. When he saw me, he froze. For a second, I saw a flicker of confusion in his eyes. He expected the police. He expected hotel security. He did not expect Winston King, the 68-year-old retired accountant, standing in the doorway, leaning heavily on a cane, wearing a suit that was older than he was. The confusion quickly replaced by a sneer. A cruel, arrogant smile spread across his face. He lowered the statue, but he did not put it down. "Well, well," Braden said, his voice dripping with venom. "Look who finally showed up. The ghost of Christmas past. How did you get in here, Winston? Did you bribe the maid with your Social Security check?" I did not speak. I stepped into the room and let the door click shut behind me. I stood my ground. I stared at him with the cold, impassive gaze I had used to break down tax evaders who were hiding millions. Braden laughed. It was a high manic sound. "You look pathetic," he spat, leaning on that stick. "What are you going to do, old man? Are you going to lecture me? Are you going to tell me how disappointed you are? Save your breath. You are too late. The money is gone. The house is gone. And Zoe is mine. She is just having a little tantrum, but she will come out. She always comes out." He took a step toward me, swinging the bronze statue casually by his side. "Get out of my room, Winston," he commanded. "Go back to the nursing home before you get hurt. You have no power here. You are nothing but a broke, washed-up ledger keeper." He really believed it. He looked at my gray hair and my cane, and he saw weakness. He did not see the muscle memory of a man who had grown up in neighborhoods where you had to fight to keep your shoes. He did not see the focus in my eyes. I took a slow, deliberate step forward. The tip of my hickory cane tapped against the marble floor. Click. "I said get out," Braden roared. He lost his temper. He lunged. It was a sloppy attack fueled by arrogance and adrenaline. He raised the bronze statue, aiming for my head, expecting me to cower, expecting me to raise my arms and beg for mercy. He thought he could bulldoze right through me. He was wrong. I did not cower. I did not retreat. I stopped leaning on the cane. In one fluid motion that I had practiced every morning for 20 years, I shifted my weight. I gripped the handle of the cane with both hands like a baseball bat. I didn't swing for his head. I didn't swing for his ribs. I swung for the foundation. I drove the solid hickory shaft hard into the side of his right knee. The sound was sickeningly loud. It was a wet, heavy crack that echoed off the high ceilings. Braden didn't scream immediately. His brain couldn't process the pain fast enough. His leg simply folded the wrong way. The physics were undeniable. A 200-pound man cannot stand when his structural support is shattered. He collapsed instantly, crashing face first onto the expensive Persian rug. The bronze statue flew out of his hand and skidded across the floor, stopping at my feet. Then the scream came. It was a guttural, animalistic howl that started deep in his chest and tore through his throat. He rolled onto his back, clutching his knee, his face contorted in agony. "You broke my leg," he shrieked, tears instantly springing to his eyes. "You crazy old lunatic, you broke my leg." I stood over him. I was breathing evenly. I wasn't even winded. I adjusted my cuffs. I looked down at him with zero sympathy. "I didn't break your leg, Braden," I said, my voice calm and steady. "I just liquidated your assets." He looked up at me, shock warring with the pain. He couldn't believe what had just happened. The power dynamic had shifted in the blink of an eye. The predator was now writhing on the floor and the prey was standing over him like a colossus. I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket. I pulled out the thick envelope of documents Sloan had prepared. I didn't hand them to him. I tossed them into the air. The white sheets of paper rained down on him, covering his chest and face like snow. "Read it," I said. Braden groaned, pushing a paper off his face. "What is this?" "It is the end of your life, Braden," I said. I pointed the tip of my cane at the papers. "That document on top. That is a copy of the deed to the house on 4th Street. Look at the signature line." He squinted through his pain. "It says Winston King," he gasped. "So what?" "I signed it for you." "No," I corrected him. "You signed for Winston King, the individual. But Winston King does not own that house. The Etta and Winston Irrevocable Trust owns that house, and you, Braden, are not a trustee. You sold property you do not own to a company that did not check the records. That is called real estate fraud, and since you used the mail and the internet to do it, that is wire fraud. That is 20 years in federal prison right there." Braden's face went pale. He tried to sit up, but the pain in his knee forced him back down. "But the money," he stammered. "The bank account. I have the money." "I transferred it." I laughed. It was a dry, harsh sound. "You transferred bait, Braden. That account was a trap. It was a honeypot designed specifically for a greedy man to stick his hand in, and you grabbed it with both hands." I used the cane to flip over another piece of paper lying on his chest. It was a printout of the wire transfer tracking code. "Look at the status code," I said. "See that red text? It says, frozen, pending federal investigation." "You never had the money," I continued, leaning down so my face was inches from his. "Sloan contacted the authorities the moment you hit send. The FBI has been tracking that transfer for 4 hours. You didn't steal a fortune, Braden. You stole a tracking device. You led them right to your offshore accounts. You led them right to your investors. You are not rich. You are destitute, and you are about to be indicted for money laundering." Braden started to shake. It wasn't just the pain anymore. It was the realization that he had been outplayed. He had been playing checkers while I was playing three-dimensional chess. "But I can fix this," he whispered, his voice trembling. "I can give it back. I will tell them it was a mistake. We are family, Winston. You can't let me go to jail." "Family," I repeated the word, tasting the bile in my mouth. "You want to talk about family?" I pointed the cane at the wet stain on the carpet where the water bottle had fallen. "Let's talk about that water, Braden. Let's talk about what you put in it." Braden's eyes widened until I thought they would pop out of his head. He looked at the stain, then back at me. He shook his head violently. "It was nothing. It was just aspirin. Zoe had a headache." "Do not lie to me," I roared. My voice filled the room, shaking the crystals on the chandelier. "We are in a casino, Braden. There are cameras everywhere. There is a camera in the hallway. There is a camera on the balcony. And there is a high-definition camera right above the minibar." I pointed to the black dome in the ceiling. "My security team watched you crush that pill. They watched you dissolve it. They have the footage, Braden. They have you in 4K resolution mixing a lethal dose of narcotics into a bottle of water and handing it to my daughter." Braden looked up at the camera. His mouth fell open. "That is not fraud," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that was more terrifying than the shout. "That is attempted murder. That is a life sentence. You were going to kill her for the insurance money, weren't you? You were going to push her off that balcony." Braden began to sob. Ugly, desperate sobs. No, I wasn't. I just wanted her to sleep. I needed the money. "They were going to kill me, Winston. The loan sharks. They are coming at midnight." I checked my watch. It was 11:55. "Well then," I said, straightening up. "It seems you have a choice. You can stay here and wait for your friends with the baseball bats. Or you can deal with the police who are coming up the elevator right now." I looked at the bathroom door. "You can come out now, Zoe," I called out. "It is over." The lock clicked. The bathroom door opened slowly. Zoe stepped out. She looked at Braden writhing on the floor, covered in legal papers, holding his broken knee. She looked at me, standing tall and unbroken. She didn't run to him. She didn't ask if he was okay. She walked past him as if he were a piece of furniture. She came to me and buried her face in my chest. I held her tight. I felt her shaking. "He is a monster, Dad," she whispered. "I know, baby," I said, smoothing her hair. "But the monster is in the cage now." Braden reached out a hand toward her. "Zoe, Please, he begged. Help me. It hurts. I stepped between them, blocking his view of her. Don't speak to her, I said. You don't have the right to speak her name. You are done, Braden. You are just a case number now. Suddenly the room filled with noise. The main door burst open. But it wasn't the loan sharks. It was Marcus and his team, followed closely by 6 officers from the Las Vegas Police Department and 2 agents in windbreakers that said FBI. The room was instantly flooded with blue uniforms. Get on the ground, one officer shouted at Braden, not realizing he was already incapable of standing. I stepped back, pulling Zoe with me. I watched as they handcuffed him. I watched as they read him his rights. I watched as the reality of his life crashed down on him. He looked at me one last time as they dragged him out. His eyes were full of hate, but also full of a begrudging respect. He finally understood. He had tried to steal from an old man. He forgot that old men are survivors, and survivors do not forgive easily. I looked at the pile of papers on the floor, the fake deed, the frozen transfer receipt. I felt a deep, weary satisfaction. I had my house back. I had my money back. But most importantly, I had my daughter back. I turned to Marcus, who was standing by the door. Make sure the police get the hard drive from the safe, I said. And Marcus, give the footage of the water bottle directly to the FBI. I don't want any leaks. Consider it done, Winston Marcus said. I looked down at Zoe. Let's go home, I said. She nodded, wiping her tears. Not the house on 4th Street, she asked. Yes, I said. Our house. It needs a lot of work, but the foundation is strong. We walked out of the suite, leaving the wreckage of Braden's ambition behind us. The hunter had caught the wolf, and now it was time to heal the wound. The room was already spinning with pain and adrenaline, but the true chaos was only just beginning. Braden was still on the floor, clutching his shattered knee and weeping into the carpet when the heavy oak door swung open again. It did not hit the wall. It was stopped by a hand the size of a catcher's mitt. The 2 men who entered were not wearing uniforms. They were wearing expensive suits that were slightly too tight across the shoulders. I recognized them immediately. They were the loan sharks Braden had tried to stall earlier. They had come to collect, and they did not care that it was midnight. They did not care that Braden was bleeding. To them, a debt was a physical thing, and they were here to extract it. The lead man looked around the room. His eyes swept over me, dismissing the old man with the cane. They swept over Zoe, who was standing behind me. They landed on Braden. Well, Braden, the man said, his voice sounding like gravel grinding together. It is 12:01. You are late. Braden scrambled backward, using his elbows to drag his body across the floor. He left a trail of sweat and tears on the rug. Help me, he screamed, looking at me. Winston, call the police. They are going to kill me. Tell them I have the money. Tell them about the transfer. I took a step to the side. I moved Zoe with me. We were spectators now. I looked at the enforcer and nodded once. He does not have the money, I said calmly. The transfer he told you about was flagged for fraud. It never cleared. He is penniless. The enforcer looked at me, then back at Braden. His face did not change expression, but his eyes went dead. He reached into his jacket. He did not pull out a gun. He pulled out a pair of leather gloves and began to pull them on slowly. Each snap of the leather was a promise of violence. You lied to us, Braden, the man said, walking forward. You wasted our time, and you insulted our intelligence. Braden shrieked. He tried to stand, but his broken leg collapsed under him, sending him crashing back down. No, listen to me. My father-in-law is lying. He has the money. Take him. Take the girl. Just leave me alone. Zoe gasped. Even after everything, even after the poison, he was still trying to trade her life for his safety. He was offering her to these wolves to buy himself 5 minutes of air. The second enforcer stepped forward, blocking the door. There was no escape. Braden was trapped in a box of his own making. The first man reached down and grabbed Braden by the lapels of his ruined silk shirt. He lifted him off the floor effortlessly. Braden's legs dangled, his broken knee twisting at a sickening angle. Please, Braden begged, sobbing uncontrollably. I can get it. I have a policy. An insurance policy. He was still trying to sell the murder plot. He was still trying to monetize my daughter's death while she stood right there watching him. I tightened my grip on my cane. I was about to intervene. I wanted him punished, but I did not want him beaten to death in front of Zoe. I needed him alive for prison. But before the enforcer could throw the first punch, the hallway erupted. Police, federal agents, nobody move. The command boomed through the open door like a cannon shot. Marcus had timed it perfectly. The corridor was suddenly filled with the blinding blue strobe of tactical flashlights. Uniformed officers from the Las Vegas Police Department poured into the room, followed by 2 agents in FBI windbreakers. The loan sharks froze. They were professionals. They knew when the game was up. The big man dropped Braden back onto the floor and raised his hands. He stepped back, blending into the wall, trying to look like a concerned bystander. But the police were not looking at him. They were looking at the man screaming on the floor. Officers swarmed the room. The energy was frenetic. Radios crackled. Weapons were drawn but pointed at the floor. "Secure the room," one agent shouted. Braden saw the uniforms and made one last desperate gamble. He pointed a shaking finger at me. "He assaulted me," Braden screamed, his voice hysterical. "Arrest him, that old man. He broke my leg with a metal bar. He is crazy. He is trying to kill me. I am the victim here. Help me." The officers looked at me. I stood tall, leaning on my cane, my other arm wrapped protectively around Zoe. I looked like a grandfather protecting his child, not an assailant. "Officer," I said, my voice steady and authoritative, cutting through the noise. "My name is Winston King. I am a retired federal auditor. This man is my son-in-law. He is currently suffering from a self-inflicted injury sustained while attempting to flee after poisoning my daughter." Liar, Braden howled. "She is fine. Look at her. She is fine." It was just water. An FBI agent stepped forward. He looked at Braden, then at me. "Who has the evidence?" he asked. Zoe stepped out from behind me. She looked like a warrior queen. Her face was pale, but her eyes were dry and fierce. She walked past the loan sharks who were being handcuffed by the police. She walked past Braden, who was looking up at her with a mixture of hope and terror. She stopped in front of the FBI agent. "I have the evidence," she said. Her voice did not waver. She held out her hand. In her palm lay the recording device I had given her months ago, disguised as a keychain along with her phone. I recorded everything she said, every threat, every lie. "And the water bottle is over there." She pointed to the bottle lying on its side near the sofa, a puddle of poisoned liquid soaking into the carpet. "He tried to make me drink it," she continued. "He told me it was medicine. But my father warned me." Braden stared at her. His mouth opened and closed like a fish on dry land. "You recorded me," he whispered. "Zoe, how could you? We were going to be married." Zoe looked down at him. She looked at the man she had planned to spend her life with. She saw the greed. She saw the cowardice. She saw the nothingness behind his eyes. "We were never going to be married, Braden," she said coldly. "You were going to be a widower, and I was going to be a payout." The FBI agent nodded to his team. "Bag the bottle, get the samples, and take him into custody." 2 officers moved in on Braden. They didn't care about his leg. They grabbed his arms and hauled him up. He screamed in pain as they dragged him toward the door. "You can't do this," Braden yelled, thrashing against the cuffs. "I want a lawyer. I want my phone." "You will get a lawyer," the agent said boringly. "But first you are going to the hospital, and then you are going to a federal holding cell." As they dragged him past me, Braden dug his heels into the carpet. He locked eyes with me. The arrogance was gone. All that was left was fear. "Winston," he pleaded. "Winston, stop them. I will sign the house back. I will give you the money. Just tell them it was a misunderstanding. Please. I am family." I signaled the officers to pause. They stopped. Braden hung between them, limp and broken. I leaned in close. I wanted him to hear this. I wanted this to be the last thing he heard before the cell door slammed shut. I brought my face inches from his ear. I smelled the sweat and the cheap champagne. "You don't have anything to give back, Braden," I whispered. He blinked, confusion clouding his panic. "What?" "The Cayman account," I said softly. "The one you wired the $400,000 to. The one you thought was secret." Braden nodded desperately. Yes, I can access it. I can give it to you." I smiled. It was a terrifying smile. "You can't access it," I said. "I called Interpol 3 hours ago. I gave them the routing numbers. I gave them the account holder names. I gave them your password, Braden." His eyes went wide. "Frozen," I whispered. "Pending seizure. The moment that money hit the account, it was locked down. You are not just broke, Braden. You are negative. You have no money for a lawyer. You have no money for bail. You have no money to pay back those men in the suits over there." I pulled back and looked him in the eye. "You are going to prison, poor," I said. "And in prison, poor men do not last very long." Braden made a sound that wasn't human. It was the sound of a soul breaking. He realized then that I hadn't just beaten him. I had erased him. "Get him out of here," I said to the officers. They dragged him out the door. His screams echoed down the hallway, fading into the rhythm of the casino slot machines below. I turned to Zoe. She was standing by the window looking out at the lights of the Strip. The loan sharks were being led out in cuffs behind us. The room was finally quiet. I walked over to her. I put my arm around her shoulders. "It is done," I said. Zoe leaned her head on my shoulder. She took a deep breath. "He really didn't love me, did he, Dad?" she asked softly. I looked at the reflection of my daughter in the glass. "He didn't know how to love Zoe," I said. "He only knew how to consume. But you survived him. And that is the best revenge." I looked at the chaos of the room, the overturned furniture, the spilled water, the broken dreams. It was a mess. But it was a mess we could clean up. "Let's go home," I said. And for the first time in 2 years, I saw a real smile on my daughter's face. It was weak and it was sad, but it was hers. "Okay, Dad," she said. "Let's go home." 3 months later, the federal courthouse in Las Vegas smelled of lemon polish and despair. It is a smell I know well. I spent 30 years of my life inside rooms just like this one, testifying against men who thought they were smarter than the system. But today was different. Today I was not sitting at the prosecution table as a government employee. I was sitting in the gallery as a victim and a father. Braden Vance limped into the courtroom. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit that hung loosely on his frame. He had lost 20 pounds. His hair, which used to be styled with $50 gel, was shaved close to his scalp. He looked like a plucked chicken. He was not using a cane for his healing knee. He was dragging his leg behind him, a physical reminder of the night his world collapsed. He had refused a public defender. Of course he had. Braden's narcissism was terminal. He believed that no lawyer could represent him better than he could represent himself. He believed that his charm, which had worked on lonely women and gullible investors, would work on a federal judge. He stood up when it was his turn to speak. He gripped the edge of the defense table. He did not look at the jury. He looked directly at me. "Your Honor," Braden began, his voice shaky but loud, "this entire trial is a farce. It is a witch hunt. I am a businessman. I am an entrepreneur. The only reason I am standing here is because of the man sitting in the third row." He pointed a finger at me. "Winston King has had a vendetta against me from the day I met his daughter," Braden continued. "He hated that I was young. He hated that I was ambitious. And let us be honest about the elephant in the room. He hated that I am white." A murmur ran through the courtroom. The judge, a stern woman named Justice Halloway, looked over her glasses. She did not look impressed. "Mr. Vance," she said, "you are charged with wire fraud, money laundering, and attempted murder. Please stick to the facts of the case." "These are the facts," Braden shouted, slamming his hand on the table. "He framed me. He set up that bank account to trap me. He is a former IRS agent. He knows how to manipulate the system. He planted the drugs in the water. He gaslit his own daughter into turning against me. This is reverse racism, Your Honor. He could not stand seeing a white man succeed with his money, so he destroyed me." I sat perfectly still. I did not frown. I did not shake my head. I let him dig. Every word he spoke was another shovel of dirt on his own grave. The jury was looking at him with a mixture of pity and disgust. They saw what I saw. They saw a desperate, drowning man trying to pull everyone else down with him. Braden continued for 20 minutes. He rambled about conspiracy theories. He claimed the FBI doctored the security footage. He claimed the loan sharks were actors I had hired. It was pathetic. It was the last gasp of a man who had lived his entire life in a fantasy world and was finally crashing into the hard concrete wall of reality. When he finally sat down, he looked triumphant. He actually thought he had made a point. He smoothed his jumpsuit as if it were an Armani tuxedo. Then the prosecutor stood up. "The government calls Winston King to the stand," she said. I stood up. I buttoned my jacket. I walked to the witness stand with the steady, rhythmic tapping of my cane. I swore on the Bible. I sat down. I opened my leather briefcase and took out a single laptop. "Mr. King," the prosecutor asked, "can you explain to the jury what you found when you analyzed the defendant's financial history?" I adjusted the microphone. "I certainly can," I said. I connected my laptop to the courtroom projector. A complex web of spreadsheets and timelines appeared on the main screen. Numbers do not lie. I began, my voice filling the room. People lie. Narcissists lie. But math is absolute. I used a laser pointer to circle a series of transactions. Mr. Vance claims he is a successful investor, I said. But if you look at this column here, you will see that 90% of his income for the last 2 years came from 3 sources: his 2 ex-wives whom he bankrupted, and my daughter Zoe. I clicked to the next slide. Here we see the so-called investment transfers, I continued. On October 4th, he transferred $5,000 from Zoe's savings to an account labeled Capital Growth Fund. But if we trace the routing number, it does not go to a brokerage. It goes to an online betting site based in Antigua. I heard a gasp from the gallery. Zoe was sitting there with Sloan. She knew this already, but seeing it on the big screen was different. I clicked again. Here is the $50,000 he borrowed from the individuals who visited us in the hotel room, I said. He claimed it was a bridge loan for real estate, but the timestamp shows he spent $10,000 of it at the casino tables within an hour of receiving the cash. He lost it all on black. I turned to look at Braden. He was shrinking in his seat. He was not looking at me anymore. He was looking at the table. But the most damning evidence is this, I said, pulling up the final chart. It was a timeline of the night in Vegas. At 8:00 p.m. his credit cards were declined, I explained. At 8:30 p.m. he received a text message from the loan sharks demanding payment by midnight. And at 8:45 p.m., exactly 15 minutes later, he used his phone to search for the terms of Zoe's life insurance policy. The courtroom was dead silent. He did not check his bank balance, I said, my voice hard as steel. He did not call a lawyer. He checked to see if suicide or accidental death was covered in the first 2 years of a policy. He was doing a cost-benefit analysis on my daughter's life. I looked at the jury. He needed $2 million to clear his debts and flee the country, I said. And he decided that the woman who loved him was worth exactly that much, dead. This was not a crime of passion. It was a balance sheet decision. He treated her murder like a business transaction. I closed my laptop. The snap of the lid echoed in the silent room. That is what a forensic audit shows, I concluded. It shows a predator who ran out of other people's money and decided to liquidate the only asset he had left: his wife. I stepped down from the stand. I walked past the defense table. Braden refused to look up. He was shaking. He knew it was over. The math had buried him. The jury deliberated for less than an hour. It was a formality. When they returned, the foreman did not look at Braden. "We find the defendant Braden Vance guilty on all counts," the foreman said. "Guilty of wire fraud, guilty of money laundering, guilty of aggravated identity theft, and guilty of attempted murder in the first degree." Justice Halloway banged her gavel. She looked down at Braden with eyes that had seen too many men like him. "Mr. Vance," she said, "you are a parasite. You have preyed on the kindness of women and the trust of families for your entire adult life. You have shown zero remorse. You have mocked this court, and you have attempted to blame your victims for your own greed." Braden stood up. He was trembling violently now. "Your Honor, please," he begged. "I can change. I need therapy. I have a problem." "You certainly do have a problem," the judge said coldly, "and I am going to solve it." She picked up a piece of paper. "I sentence you to 25 years in a federal penitentiary," she read. "You will not be eligible for parole for at least 20 years. Additionally, you are ordered to pay restitution of $400,000 to the victims." 25 years, Braden screamed. His legs gave out. He collapsed into the chair. 25 years meant his life was over. He would go in a young man and come out an old one. He would lose his looks, his charm, and his youth in a concrete box. No, you can't do this," he wailed. "It is too long. It is not fair. Winston, tell them. Tell them it is too long." He turned to me. He reached out a hand. "Dad, please," he sobbed. I stood up. I looked him in the eye. I did not smile. I did not gloat. I just looked at him with the fatigue of a man who has finished a long, dirty job. "I am not your dad," I said quietly. "And you are not a businessman, Braden. You are just a number." "Bailiffs, take him away," the judge ordered. 2 large officers grabbed Braden by the arms. They hauled him up. He kicked and screamed as they dragged him toward the side door. "Zoe, I love you," he screamed, looking back at the gallery. I did it for us. Don't let them take me." Zoe did not move. She sat beside Sloane, her hands folded in her lap. She watched him go. She watched the door close behind him. She watched the silence return to the room. It was over. The loud, flashy, dangerous storm that was Braden Vance had been silenced by the dull, heavy weight of the law. I walked over to Zoe. I offered her my hand. "Come on," I said. She stood up. She looked at the empty defense table. "Is he gone for good?" she asked. I nodded. "The numbers are balanced," I said. "The account is closed." We walked out of the courthouse into the bright, blinding sun of the Nevada desert. It burned my eyes, but it felt clean. It felt like the fire that comes after the plague. We had survived. And Braden was just a ghost story we would tell to remind ourselves of what we had overcome. The silence in the house on 4th Street was different now. It was no longer the empty, hollow silence of a crime scene. It was the heavy, exhausted silence of a hospital room after the fever has broken. We were sitting in the living room. The furniture was still missing. The floor was still scarred where the movers had dragged my armchair. Zoe sat on a folding chair I had brought up from the basement. She was staring at her hands. Her hands were shaking. They had not stopped shaking since the courthouse. I went to the kitchen and made tea. I used the old kettle, the one Etta liked, because it whistled in the key of C. I brought 2 mugs into the living room. I handed one to Zoe. She took it with both hands, letting the warmth seep into her cold skin. "Dad," she whispered. Her voice was brittle like dry leaves. "I am so sorry." I sat down on a milk crate opposite her. I did not say anything yet. I wanted her to find the words. I wanted her to purge the poison. I was so stupid, she continued, tears finally spilling over her lashes. "He told me you were controlling. He told me you were jealous of our happiness. And I believed him. I let him sell the house. I let him talk to you like that on the plane. I sat there and I watched him humiliate you and I did nothing." She took a shuddering breath. "I almost let him kill me, Dad. I was going to drink that water. If you hadn't texted me, I would be dead right now. And for what? For a man who looked at me and saw a checkbook." I took a sip of my tea. It was bitter. I had forgotten the sugar. "You were not stupid, Zoe," I said gently but firmly. "You were hungry." She looked up at me confused. "Hungry?" "Yes, hungry," I said. "You were hungry for validation. Braden was a predator, and predators know how to spot hunger. He saw that you wanted to be seen. He saw that you wanted a life that was bigger and brighter than this old brick house. So he fed you a fantasy. He fed you compliments. He fed you dreams of travel and luxury, and like any starving person, you ate it up without checking the ingredients." Zoe put the mug down on the floor. She covered her face with her hands. "I feel so dirty," she sobbed. "I feel like I have his fingerprints all over my soul. I helped him hurt you. I can never forgive myself for that." I reached out and touched her knee. "Forgiveness is an accounting term, Zoe," I said. "It means to write off a debt. I wrote off your debt the moment I walked into that hotel room. You don't owe me an apology. But you do owe yourself something. You owe yourself the truth." She looked at me, her eyes red and swollen. "What truth?" she asked. "The truth that you are strong enough to survive this," I said. "You fell down. You fell down hard, but you are still here. The house is still here, and I am still here. Now pick up your tea. We have work to do." She picked up the mug. Her hands were steadying slightly. She took a sip. "What do we do now?" she asked. I stood up and walked to the closet where I kept the old safe. I pulled out a small black ledger. "Now," I said, "we count the cost." I opened the ledger on the floor between us. I had already run the numbers. Braden had not just tried to steal my money. He had destroyed Zoe's credit. He had opened 5 credit cards in her name. He had maxed them out on hotels, dinners, and that ridiculous engagement ring that was now sitting in an evidence bag. "The total debt is $42,000, I said, pointing to the figure at the bottom of the page. Zoe gasped. $42,000. "Dad, I can't pay that. I am a music teacher. I make barely enough to cover rent. And I gave up my apartment because Braden said we were moving to Miami. I have nothing." She looked at me with a desperate, hopeful expression. It was the look of a child who expects her father to fix the broken toy. "Can the trust pay it?" she asked. "You said the money was safe." Can we just use the trust to wipe the slate clean? I closed the ledger. The sound was sharp in the empty room. I looked at my daughter. I loved her more than my own life. I had walked into a room full of gangsters for her. But loving someone does not mean crippling them. No, I said. Zoe blinked. What? The trust will not pay this debt. I said, my voice dropping to that professional flat tone I used at the IRS. But Dad, Zoe stammered, you have the money. You just saved $1 million. Why would you let me drown in debt? I am not letting you drown, I said. I am teaching you how to swim. I sat back down on the crate. If I write a check today, Zoe, I said, looking her in the eye, you will learn nothing. You will learn that when a man hurts you, Daddy comes and cleans up the mess. You will learn that mistakes have no cost, and next year another Braden will come along. He will see a woman with no scars, and he will attack you again. I leaned forward. Braden treated you like an asset, I said. He treated you like a helpless object that he could manage. If I pay your debts, I am treating you the exact same way. I am treating you like a child who cannot handle her own life. Zoe sat back stunned. She looked at the debt figure again. But how she whispered. How do I fix this? By working, I said. By sweating. By waking up every morning and earning your freedom. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a passbook. It was an old savings book from the credit union. I opened it to the last page. This is the account I started for you when you were born, I said. Every birthday, every Christmas, Etta and I put money in here. It is part of the trust. I showed her the balance. It was substantial. Enough to buy a house, enough to retire. This money is yours, I said, but you cannot touch it. Not a cent. Not until you have paid off that $42,000 yourself. Zoe looked at the book, then at me. You are serious, she said. I am deadly serious, I said. You are going to live here with me. You don't have to pay rent. I will buy the groceries. But that debt is yours. You are going to get a job. You are going to pick up extra shifts. And every month you are going to write a check to the credit card company. And every time you sign that check, you are going to remember Braden. You are going to remember the price of trusting the wrong person. Zoe stared at me for a long time. I saw a flash of anger in her eyes. Good. Anger is fuel. Then the anger faded and was replaced by something else. Respect. She realized that I wasn't punishing her. I was armoring her. Okay, she said softly. She straightened her back. Okay, Dad. I will do it. Good, I said. Now stand up. We have one more thing to do before you start your new life. I led her to the fireplace. It was cold and dark. I handed her a box of matches. I went to the gym bag I had brought back from Vegas. I pulled out a stack of letters. They were the love letters Braden had written her. They were filled with lies about destiny and soulmates. I also pulled out the photos she had framed, the ones of them smiling on beaches and at parties. I threw them into the grate. Zoe looked at the pile. It was her history. It was the last 2 years of her life. Burn it, I said. She took a match. She struck it against the box. The flame flared up yellow and bright. She stared at the photo on top of the pile. It was from the day he proposed. He was on one knee looking adoringly at her. She knew now that on that very day he was probably texting his bookie. He is not real, she whispered. He never was. She dropped the match. The paper caught fire instantly. The flames curled the edges of the photo, turning Braden's smiling face into black ash. We stood there watching the fire grow. We watched the letters turn into smoke. We watched the lies disintegrate. The heat warmed the room. It chased away the chill of the empty house. When the last flame died down, leaving only gray dust, Zoe turned to me. She wiped a smudge of soot from her cheek. I have an interview tomorrow, she said. Oh, I asked. Where? At the diner on 5th Street, she said. They need a morning manager. It is not glamorous. It smells like grease and coffee, but it pays, and I can teach piano in the afternoons. I nodded. I felt a swelling of pride in my chest that was stronger than when she graduated college. That sounds like a plan, I said. It will take me 2 years to pay this off, she said, calculating in her head. Maybe 3. Then it will be 3 years well spent, I said. She hugged me then. It was a fierce hug, a hug of gratitude. Thank you for not saving me, she whispered. I saved your life, I said, kissing the top of her head, but you have to save your soul. She pulled away. She looked at the clock. I am going to iron my uniform, she said. I start at 6 a.m. She walked up the stairs. I listened to her footsteps. They were heavy, tired footsteps, but they were steady. She wasn't floating on a cloud of lies anymore. She was walking on solid ground. I looked at the fireplace one last time. The ash was cold. I took the poker and stirred it, crushing the last remnants of Braden's face into dust. I walked to the kitchen and opened the fridge. It was empty. I needed to go shopping. I needed to buy eggs and bacon. My daughter was a working woman now. She would need a good breakfast. I grabbed my cane and my coat. I walked out into the night. The air was crisp. The stars were out. For the first time in a long time, the ledger of my life felt balanced. The house was safe. The money was safe. And Zoe, she was going to be just fine. She was a king, after all. And kings do not break. We just rebuild. The pawn shop was on the south side of the city, sandwiched between a liquor store and a bail bondsman. It was the kind of place where desperation went to trade its last valuables for a few days of survival. I parked my car out front. I did not need a cane to walk into this place. I needed presence. The bell above the door jingled a cheap tinny sound that announced a customer. The air inside smelled of stale cigarette smoke and dust. I walked past the rows of power tools and the glass cases filled with wedding rings that had been pawned when marriages failed or layoffs hit. I walked straight to the back corner. There it was, my wife Etta's Steinway grand piano. It was shoved against a wall covered in old blankets and a stack of used car stereo amplifiers. To the pawnbroker, it was just a piece of furniture that took up too much floor space. To me, it was the voice of my dead wife. Braden had sold it for $2,000. That was what the receipt said in the evidence file. $2,000 for an instrument worth $40,000. $2,000 for the object that had played lullabies to Zoe when she was an infant. I felt a surge of anger, but I pushed it down. Anger was for the courtroom. This was business. I approached the counter. The man behind the glass was eating a sandwich. He looked at me with boredom. "Can I help you, Pop?" he asked. I pointed to the back corner. "That piano," I said. "I am here to buy it back." The man chewed slowly. "That thing. It is heavy. You got a truck." "I have movers coming," I said. "How much?" The man looked at a ledger. "I got $3,000 on it," he said. I placed a check on the counter. It was already written out for $2,000. "You paid $2,000 for it," I said. "That is what you will get back." The man laughed. He wiped mayonnaise from his mouth. "That is not how this works, Pop. I need to make a profit. It is business." I looked at him. I leaned forward until my face was close to the glass. "That piano was stolen." I said, my voice low and dangerous. "It is currently listed as evidence in a federal wire fraud case involving the FBI. I can have a team of agents here in 20 minutes to seize it as contraband. They will also seize your records to check for other stolen goods. Or you can take this check for the principal amount and I will forget to mention your name to the prosecutor." The man stopped chewing. He looked at the check. He looked at me. He saw the way I stood. He saw the suit. He realized I was not a customer he could hustle. He slid the check under the glass. "Take it," he muttered. "Just get it out of here." 2 hours later, the piano was back in the living room on 4th Street. The movers were careful. They set it down exactly where it had stood for 30 years. The indentations in the floorboards matched perfectly. I grabbed a soft cloth and a bottle of wood polish. I spent the next 3 hours cleaning it. I wiped away the dust of the pawn shop. I wiped away the fingerprints of the men who had moved it. I polished the mahogany until it shone like dark water. Zoe came downstairs. She had just finished her shift at the diner. She smelled like coffee and fries, but she looked cleaner than she ever had in expensive perfume. She stopped in the doorway. She saw the piano. "Dad," she whispered, "you got it." "Come play," I said. She walked over. She sat on the bench. Her hands hovered over the keys. She hadn't played in 2 years. Braden had told her it was annoying. He had told her music was a waste of time unless she was getting paid for it. She pressed a single key. Middle C. The note rang out clear and true, filling the empty house with life. Zoe closed her eyes. She played a chord, then another. Then she began to play a piece by Chopin, the one Etta loved. She missed a few notes. Her fingers were stiff, but the soul was there. I sat in my armchair and closed my eyes. For the first time since Etta died, the house did not feel empty. It felt full. The piano was the heart, but the body of the house still needed healing. Braden's renovation plans had left scars. There were holes in the drywall where he had ripped out sconces. The floors were scratched. The garden was a wreck. I could have hired a big contractor. I had the money in the trust. But I didn't want strangers in my house. I didn't want men who just wanted a paycheck. I wanted to build something real. I went to the community center 3 blocks away. I spoke to the director. I told him I needed a crew, but I didn't want professionals. I wanted young men from the neighborhood, men who had made mistakes, men who were on probation, men who needed a second chance but couldn't find anyone to give it to them. The next day, 3 young men showed up at my door. The oldest was Terrence. He was 22. He had done 18 months for theft. He stood on my porch looking at his boots, expecting me to turn him away. "Mr. King," he said, "the director said you needed help with the floors." I looked at him. I saw the hesitation in his eyes. I saw the fear that I would judge him. "I don't need help, Terrence," I said. "I need partners. Do you know how to sand white oak?" "No, sir," he said. "Good," I said. "Then you don't have any bad habits I have to break. Come inside." For the next 6 months, my house became a school. I taught Terrence and the other 2 boys how to refinish floors. I taught them how to patch drywall so seamless you couldn't see the joint. I taught them how to prune roses without killing the bush. But I taught them more than that. At lunch breaks, we sat in the kitchen. I made sandwiches. I opened my ledger. "How much are you getting paid for this job, Terrence?" I asked one day. "15 an hour, Mr. King," he said. "And what are you going to do with it?" I asked. He shrugged. "Buy some shoes. Maybe put some rims on my car." I shook my head. "That is how you stay poor," I said. I took a napkin. I drew a chart. "This is compound interest," I said. "If you take that $15 and put 5 of it into a Roth IRA index fund, by the time you are my age, you will be a millionaire. If you buy rims, the rims will be rusted in 5 years and you will be broke." Terrence looked at the napkin. He looked at me. "Nobody ever told me that," he said. "They just taught me how to pass a test in school. They never taught me about money." "Braden went to the best schools money could buy," I told him. "And he is in prison because he didn't understand value. He only understood price. You have a head start, Terrence. You know what it feels like to lose everything, so you will appreciate what you build." Zoe joined us sometimes. She didn't lecture. She just listened. She learned too. She learned that the young men she used to cross the street to avoid were just like her, trying to find a way forward in a world that wanted to keep them down. One afternoon, I found Terrence teaching Zoe how to use a power drill. They were laughing. It was an innocent sound, a human sound. By the time the renovation was finished, the house was better than it had been before. It wasn't just restored, it was fortified. We installed a new security system, cameras on every corner, sensors on every window. The house was beautiful, but it was different. It wasn't open anymore. We kept the gates locked. We checked the monitors before we answered the door. This was the new normal, peaceful but vigilant. I sat on the front porch in the evenings. I watched the street. I wasn't paranoid. I was just aware. I knew that monsters didn't always look like monsters. Sometimes they looked like handsome young men in suits. Sometimes they looked like charming neighbors. I kept my cane next to my chair. It wasn't just a walking aid. It was a reminder. Zoe came out and sat next to me. She was tired. She had worked a double shift at the diner and then taught 3 piano lessons. Her hands were rougher now. She had cut her nails short. She didn't look like the princess Braden had tried to mold. She looked like a woman. "I paid off another 1,000 today, Dad," she said. I nodded. "Good. How much is left?" 18,000, she said. "You are getting there," I said. She looked at the house. The fresh paint gleamed in the twilight. The rose bushes were blooming red and vibrant thanks to Terrence's care. "It feels different," she said. "The house, it feels stronger." "It is stronger," I said, "because we built it back ourselves." She rested her head on my shoulder. "Dad," she asked, "do you think he thinks about us?" Who, I asked, knowing the answer. Braden. I looked down the street. A police cruiser drove by on patrol. I waved. The officer waved back. "I don't care what he thinks about Zoe," I said. "He is in the past. We are in the present. And the present is the only thing we can control." She squeezed my hand. "Terrence asked me if I wanted to go for coffee," she said quietly. "Not a date. Just coffee." He wants to show me his investment portfolio. He opened an IRA like you said. I smiled. A real genuine smile. Terrence is a good man, I said. He has calluses on his hands. You can trust a man with calluses, Zoe. It means he knows what it takes to build something. She nodded. Maybe I will go. The sun went down. The porch lights flickered on automatically. The sensors hummed their silent protection. We sat there in the quiet safety of our fortress. We had walked through the fire and we had not burned. We had been forged. The house was not just wood and brick. It was a testament. It stood there on 4th Street, proving that you can steal a man's money, you can break his heart, but you can never steal his dignity, not while he still has breath in his lungs and a reason to fight, and I had plenty of fight left in me. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning. It was not the crisp white linen paper that Braden used to favor when he was pretending to be a high-flying investor. It was cheap, brown recycled paper that felt rough against my fingertips. In the upper right corner there was no stamp. Instead, there was a red ink stamp that read, "Checked by Department of Corrections." I knew who it was from before I even saw the return address. The handwriting was familiar, but it had changed. It was no longer the sweeping, arrogant scrawl of a man signing checks with other people's money. It was cramped and small. It was the handwriting of a man living in a 6x8 cell. I sat down at my kitchen table. The morning sun was streaming through the window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. The house was quiet. Zoe was at work. I used a letter opener to slit the envelope. I did not tear it. I opened it with the same precision I used to audit tax returns. Inside was a single sheet of lined yellow paper. Dear Winston. The letter began. I paused. He didn't call me Dad. He didn't call me Old Man. He used my name. I hope you are well, the letter continued. I am writing to you because I have no one else. My parents have stopped answering my calls. My so-called friends from the club have blocked my number. You are the only family I have left, Winston. I took a sip of my coffee. The audacity of this man was truly something to behold. He had tried to steal my home. He had tried to kill my daughter. And now he was claiming we were family. I am having a hard time in here, Braden wrote. The food is inedible. The other inmates are violent. I need to buy some things from the commissary just to survive. Soap, toothpaste, maybe some ramen noodles. I am not asking for much, just $50. Or maybe $100 if you can spare it. I know you got the house back. I know you have the trust. Please, Winston, show some Christian charity. I am begging you. I am a changed man. I have found God. I put the letter down. I looked out the window at the garden. Terrence was out there mulching the rose bushes. He was whistling. He was a young man who had made mistakes, paid his price, and was now working hard to rebuild his life. He never asked me for a dime he didn't earn. Braden hadn't found God. He had found desperation. And like all narcissists, he thought he could manipulate his way out of it. He thought that if he used the right words, if he played the victim card, I would feel guilty. He thought I was a soft old man. I stood up and walked to my study. I opened the top drawer of my desk. Inside was a file labeled Vance Final. I took out my fountain pen. I pulled out a sheet of my own stationery. It was thick cream-colored paper with my name embossed at the top. Winston King. I did not write a long letter. I did not offer forgiveness. I did not offer anger. I offered him the one thing he hated most. I offered him the truth. Braden, I wrote, I received your request for funds. It is interesting that you mentioned charity. It reminded me of something. Do you remember the personal checking account you tried to drain? The one with $5,000 in it? I paused, letting the ink dry. You thought that money was yours. You thought you had stolen it before the freeze hit. Well, when the FBI concluded their investigation last week, they returned that $5,000 to me. It was the bait money, Braden. It was the money you tried to use to destroy us. I picked up the receipt I had been saving for this exact moment. I sat there looking at that check. I continued writing, and I thought about what to do with it. I could have bought a new suit. I could have taken a vacation. But I decided that money should go to a cause that truly reflects your legacy. I reached into the file and pulled out the official donation receipt. Enclosed is a receipt I wrote. I have donated the entire $5,000 to the National Center for Victims of Crime, specifically to their department dedicated to financial romance fraud. I smiled as I wrote the next line. And here is the best part, Braden. I made the donation in your name. You are now a silver-level sponsor of the very organization that helps women recover from men like you. Your name will be listed in their annual newsletter, which is distributed to prisons across the country. Everyone inside will know that Braden Vance is a donor to the Anti-Fraud League. I folded the letter. I placed the donation receipt on top of it. The receipt clearly showed his name in bold letters. Braden Vance, donor. I imagined him opening this in his cell. I imagined him realizing that the money he had tried to steal, the money he had gone to prison for, was now being used to hunt down men exactly like him. It was not just justice, it was poetry. I sealed the envelope. I pressed my thumb over the flap, sealing his fate. I did not put a return address. He knew where I lived, but he would never set foot on this street again. I walked out to the mailbox. I raised the red flag. When I turned back to the house, Zoe was walking up the driveway. She looked tired but happy. She was holding a bag of groceries. "Who was the letter for?" she asked, seeing me at the mailbox. "Just an old bill," I said. "I finally paid it off." Zoe smiled. She didn't press. She knew. We walked into the house together. The smell of lemon polish and old books welcomed us. The piano sat in the corner, gleaming in the afternoon light. I went to the kitchen to put the kettle on. I watched Zoe unpacking the groceries. She was singing softly to herself. It was the Chopin piece she had been practicing. I sat down in my armchair by the window. I picked up the framed photo of Etta that I kept on the side table. In the photo, she was laughing, her head thrown back, her eyes full of light. "We did it, Etta," I whispered. The house was safe. The money was safe. But more importantly, the future was safe. Braden had called me a priceless old man. He meant it as an insult. He meant that I had no value in his modern, fast-paced world. He meant that I was obsolete. But he was wrong. Priceless doesn't mean worthless. Priceless means something that cannot be bought. It means something that has no price tag because its value is infinite. Integrity is priceless. Family is priceless. Dignity is priceless. Braden had tried to put a price tag on all of those things. He tried to sell them for a quick payout, and in the end he sold himself for nothing. I took a sip of my tea. It was hot and strong, just the way I liked it. I am Winston King. I am 68 years old. I am a father. I am a widower. And I am the man who stood in the doorway when the wolf came knocking. I didn't run. I didn't hide. I just opened the ledger and balanced the books. Life is a long audit. You have to account for every penny and every action. And if you live it right, if you live it with honor, when you get to the end, the numbers will always add up. I looked at Zoe. She was laughing at something on her phone, probably a text from Terrence. I closed my eyes and listened to the music of my home. It was the sweetest sound in the world. And to you listening from wherever you are in the world, remember this. The loudest person in the room is rarely the strongest. The one with the most expensive suit is rarely the richest. True power is quiet. True wealth is what you can protect, not what you can spend. So check your accounts, hug your children, and never ever underestimate the quiet old man sitting in the corner. He might just be the one holding all the keys. This is Winston King signing off. Stay safe, stay smart, and always keep your receipts. Here is the final lesson learned and the call to action. To conclude the story, looking back at the wreckage Braden left behind, I learned that the most dangerous thieves don't break in through the window. They are invited in through the front door. We often ignore the red flags because we are hungry for connection, but I have learned that solitude is infinitely better than the company of someone who measures your worth in dollars. True love protects you. It never asks you to diminish yourself to fit their budget. You cannot buy loyalty and you cannot finance respect. If you have to pay for someone to stay in your life, the price is already too high. If this story of justice and resilience resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps me share more truth with the world. And I want to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever had to make a tough choice to protect your financial or emotional peace from a family member? Let's talk about it. See you in the next story.